Jesus.
And I'm giving you the movements.
I'm not asking for the history. I'm asking
you. You said it is historical, so I have to go back to the people.
No,
you're so dumb that you can't conceive of a position apart from the people who came up with the position.
So Israel. I can define Israel without going through the entire history of Israel. Feminism, while it does have... Yes, of course you can.
Really? You can't define anything without going through the entire history of the thing itself?
This is so silly because you admitted it's a historical movement, therefore it can't be divorced from the people in history.
I'm not asking
Do you think it came out of the sky? Did it come into people's minds out of the sky or from the people?
You're doing a false dichotomy again.
What are you, dude? You don't even.
You're acting like you can't define it without the history. I'm telling you.
Correct. It's a historical movement by your own definition.
That doesn't mean that you can't make a definition for the word.
Yes,
so
you
we
have
can
to
just
go to
talk
the
about
people.
it.
Where do you think words come from? From people.
They
don't come out of the sky. They come from people.
Okay, I know you can do this. You can define a word without giving me a 5-minute monologue on the history.
No, you can't.
So there's no way for you to define feminism.
Would you go to a dictionary? That's an appeal to authority.
It's not an.
No, it's not even. It's not a fallacious appeal to authority.
Most CEOs now, this was again about 10 years ago, are now women. That we're reaching some tipping point. There's a large majority of women that are now CEOs. Do you think that's good? Is that fair? Because I would see that as a revolution against male authority.
I see it. I am very dubious of her claim. B, I see it as like neutral. I don't really care who trickles up to the top, so long as the people who trickle to the top did so because there was free opportunity to do so, right? So like in our society, I'm sure here's something we probably agree on. Most of the positions of power in our society are occupied men because men tend to be more extreme. Like they're just more extreme in bell curve, like genetically. And they don't often take time away from work with kids, so they have a little bit more time to dedicate. So we see at the highest levels of trickling to the top, men typically occupy those roles. I'm sure you and I would agree.
Yeah, but when you say extreme, again, this is a very ambiguous term. Extreme in their views, extreme on the bell curve.
Sorry, I meant genetically. Like, so because of the Y-axis specifically, so I don't know if you know anything about IQ research, for example.
I know some about that.
So men, while like obviously the average IQ for men and women is 100 because it's normalized. Men tend to occupy a bit more of those extreme spaces. They're both the lowest and the highest IQ. And we see men doing that all the time. They tend to just have more extreme genetic traits, both for success and for struggling, right? That's why we tend to see men overrepresented on both sides of most things. So that's why men often will trickle to the top of most workspaces, for example.
And you think that's because of extremes of IQ?
Well, not just IQ. That would be extremes of multiple things. And also, I think I said...
You said IQ a minute ago.
Yeah, IQ would be one thing. I just don't think IQ is the only thing that would predict you trickling to the top.
So what are the things that led men to be in those positions other than IQ?
Probably just the ability to work. Like they don't take time away from work for children. Their wife typically does that.
Could there be anything biological?
Well, IQ,
would that be biological?
IQ would be something biological.
It's partly biological, but I'm saying like in terms of what a man is biologically, is that anything to do with what might be roles in society, hierarchy?
Did he just not follow any of that? Did he just miss that whole conversation? Is he a dialogue tree guy? I don't understand how he didn't understand anything she just said. Okay.
I don't think there's super good evidence that like testosterone predicts like anything other than like aggression towards those like equal or lower and like muscle distribution. I think it's a lot more going to be...
Muscle distribution is part of biology, right?
Sure. I just don't think like muscles get you to the top of a Fortune 500
What about
company.
like being a soldier? Does that help?
Yeah. Okay. That's why men are significantly better soldiers than women.
But what about that high IQ? That group of high IQ, does that help get them to the top of the CEO ladder?
That would definitely help. I think it's like a 45% to 60%.
And you admit that that's partly genetic?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So it seems like naturally speaking, when I appeal to my opening statement to what's natural and biological, men are just sort of fitted to those things. Their very constitution is for those things.
Yeah, it's just with in 2025, with women having birth control and tampons, there's less obstacles with that, so they might trickle to the top too. And I just want a society that would allow them to do so.
Is periods? Is those is that like a biology thing too?
But why? That's what I'm getting at is if this is biological and thus, quote, natural to a degree, according to what you're arguing, what's the need for women to do what is then perhaps not natural for them to do in society?
Because there are lots of women that are still in the high IQ realm that are very capable, that make excellent bosses.
So exceptions make the rule?
No, more like freedom of opportunity, right? That's my premise. It's like the innovator scale, right? I don't want to arbitrarily just say 50% of our society cannot be at the top of society because I want to make sure that if they're achieving the top of society, it's because of skill and like merit and et cetera, et cetera. That's what I believe in. And so I wouldn't want to arbitrarily ban women from those positions.
Right, but it's not, I didn't even talk about banning, so that was something that you interjected. What I said
I'm not saying you did, right? Because you were asking like what I'm interested in. I'm saying a freedom of opportunity for women to just trickle up.
There's a standard, which you would say that's a net good for society if women are able then to interject themselves into that male space.
To be allowed
that's a good. Yeah. Why is that a good?
Like I said, innovator scale.
What?
Innovator scale. More people means more innovators. You just get the best of the crop.
More people. Mm-hmm. So we should have more people in society?
Sure. I don't know if this is connected to birth rate.
Well, yeah, because the more people in society would then back up what you're arguing, right? Don't we need more husbands and wives to have more people?
Yeah, I just don't think these things are mutually exclusive.
How can a wife be a CEO and also raise the kids?
Tampons, birth control, like support.
So tampons and birth control raise the kids? What do you
mean? Lots of.
This is going to be a retarded conversation, isn't it?
Lots of women find a way to both raise children and work.
Well,
shared parenting, like the husband takes roles. Sometimes they get babysitters. Sometimes there's intergenerational families. There's multiple ways that women share the load of parenting.
So that's a net good?
Can be, yeah.
Okay. What is the standard for good here?
Do you mean like at an epistemic level?
At any level.
Good as in...
In your worldview, what determines the good?
So in the case of what we're talking about, I talked about the innovator scale. So the reason I like women being able to have access to opportunity is because it improves. In the case of what we're talking about, I talked about the innovator scale. So the reason I like women being able to have access...
What? Was he laughing, or is that like a hidden cough sneeze? Or I don't know why he's laughing when he's like not even been able to follow the conversation so far.
To opportunity is because it improves GDP.
Okay, so the net good for society is just what? More fiat money? Like what determines
Yep,
that?
GDP is a good thing. Do you disagree?
Yeah, I do.
You don't think
First of
GDP
all,
is
like
good?
what if the money is a scam?
That doesn't have anything to do with
Okay.
GDP. Why would not having more GDP for a country not be good?
The nature of the money itself, if the money system is a debt-based scam, doesn't have anything to do with GDP?
Not really, because GDP is about like the income of a country, right? So like debt is part of how you navigate income of a country.
Right, but our country's income is presently based on pure debt, right? Is that a bad thing?
Pure debt? Really? Oh, okay.
Our GDP is not based on debt, no.
It is. Well, the whole system is based on debt. Gross domestic product is not itself debt. I'm saying the economic system itself is based on debt.
Yeah.
Because we have debt?
Like
Because it's a
MTN.
debt-based system.
Yeah, like modern theory of like money is very debt organized. It's just like debt is not this like boogaloo scary thing in and of itself.
No, I'm talking about our system is fiat. It's not attached to anything hard. There's no hard currency that our money is attached to since the shock doctrine of Nixon, right? So Nixon
What is that? Who cares?
goes with the gold standard. So we're now a debt-based system. So I'm just saying your
What does he mean when he says debt-based system? He just means like fiat currency? Like,
highest quality was the best GDP in society. So your organizing principle is a neoliberal economic theory. So what I want to know is, even if that's itself based on debt, then what's the source of the good here?
So in this case, what is good for society is having a competitive GDP so that your enemies can't stop
That's
you.
the highest good?
That's not the highest good. That's the good of what I'm talking about in the case of women entering in.
What is the
innovator
highest
scale.
good that determines that that's good?
Are you talking about
Jesus.
morality?
Just at all in your system. You tell me what your system's standard of good is.
So I'm not really sure why we're having the epistemic conversation.
Why not?
Because it feels like we're losing the plot of the conversation.
No, I want to know what your standard of the good is.
Again, what do you mean by good?
You said that the GDP is necessarily attached to the highest good.
I didn't say highest good. I said it's a good thing.
Okay, then I'm asking you what the highest good is that determines that the GDP is better than not caring about GDP.
So you're
that sounds like a pre-supper argument, yeah.
asking for my moral foundation theory?
Sure.
I'm a divine
You tell
command
me.
theorist.
From what divine command?
The Christian God.
And he says GDP is good?
No.
Did Moses come down and talk
I don't
about
think GDP
that?
is moral.
You just said it was the highest good
I
for
did say it was
this,
the highest good.
this debate.
No, I said it's good for society.
Then it's moral if it's good.
I don't think it's moral in this case.
If it's good, it's moral.
Well, you can have good
The
as in
good is a
functional.
moral claim.
Well, of course you can have functional.
Technically not really. Not all normative claims, I think, need to be moral claims. You can say something is good insofar as it satisfies or fulfills some function, but it's more of a question of metaphysics or ontology rather than like meta-ethics or ethics. So for instance, if I would say, like if I say like it's good for a can to be shaped in a certain way so that it doesn't get crushed when it's shipped, that good, I think is a normative claim, but it wouldn't actually be an ethical claim. These can actually be different things. Much the same if you say that a high GDP is good for society to function or thrive or whatever. That can be, I believe, a normative claim. And you could support that eventually with an ethical claim of like society that thrives is a good one, like good capital G, ethics good. But that's a different question fundamentally, but whatever.
Claims, right?
So if it's only functional or if it's only pragmatic, then it's not ultimately a good. It's just subjective.
So at a functional
What?
level, it is, I guess, do you disagree with this idea that it's good for a state to have competitive high GDP?
It could be, but I don't think it's the highest good, and I have a standard of good. So I'm trying to figure out what yours is.
Well, what's more important for a nation state than GDP?
The health of the society?
Sure.
Okay, I don't know if Kyla has been practicing her debating or whatever, but she's doing a really good job at keeping this like razor focused on track, keeping track of exactly what she said, and understanding what she's talking about. Because this guy keeps trying to trip her up like, oh, so is that the highest good? The highest good? And she's like, no, I didn't say that, like 12 times. I don't know who this guy is. Okay.
Sure, but if the health of society is really high,
I mean, could you have, let me give you an example.
He's a slot presup, a friend of the schizo Tristan dude. Yeah, but usually presuppositionalists will have a stronger command of philosophy, or at the very least, they'll be better about railroading you into their retarded philosophy claims. This guy just seems like an idiot. I don't know.
GDP.
The health of the society?
Sure, but if the health of society is really high,
I mean, could you have, let me give you an example. Could you have a society that's mass addicted to drugs, but has a good number, a nice income?
probably not.
No, you can have societies that are full of detriment, like full of ghettos, and they're ruled over by organized crime that make a lot of money.
Typically, those countries, like if you're thinking about like the Congo or like areas that have like high levels of corruption, their GDP is horrible because typically crime is not good for GDP.
But I'm saying you could conceivably have that. It doesn't matter whether there's some exception to that rule somewhere.
It's not
in
exception. I
Congo.
would say the rule is, in general, when you have lots of corruption and drug addiction, it's not good for GDP.
But I'm saying conceivably you could have a ruling elite that makes a lot of money from drugs, and society itself is living in shantytown, right?
I don't
Living on
think that
Skid Row.
nation state would have high GDP. I don't think there's any evidence
It doesn't
that nation.
matter.
She is sounding like she is unsure, even though her words are not. She needs better point. I don't think she sounds unsure at all. Really? I feel like I pick up on that pretty easily too. When people sound like they're hesitant, she doesn't sound hesitant, unsure. She seems pretty razor in all of her responses to those.
Drugs, and the society itself is living in shantytown, right?
I don't think that nation state would have high GDP. I don't think there's any evidence.
It doesn't matter if you think that, because it's conceivable that you could have that, right? You could have a successful oligarchy that makes a lot of money, and the people themselves don't do very well.
Are you talking about like Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, but Saudi Arabia again is not nearly as competitive as somewhere like.
This is such. He's trying to break apart. She's saying that having a high GDP society is generally a good society, but he's trying to break apart like the benefit of having a high GDP society from any moral goodness. And they're like dancing around this moral claim, but they haven't actually gotten there yet. I don't know if either side is aware that this is what's happening, but it'd be like me saying like it would be good to provide a bunch of water to people so that they don't die of thirst, and then him saying like, yeah, but it's conceivable that water could not quench your thirst. And it's like, I guess it could be. Well, no, it's conceivable, right? I mean, like we could conceive of a world, yeah, but if it was possible for water not to quench your thirst, then I wouldn't advocate for water to be brought to a bunch of thirsty people. Much the same that if it was conceivable for a society to grow and thrive on elements of crime, then we probably wouldn't look at a thriving society as an example of a good one. But they're hinting at like this underlying moral claim, but they're not getting there. But this guy is an idiot.
Like America or any.
Well, again, how do we know that competitiveness for women is a good? You've just said that that's the case because it increases GDP.
So I'll just break it down.
Circle.
It's okay. If we're going to try like
what?
We can do a gripless trilemma. It's just useless. I can use it at you too, right?
Well, but if I'm arguing for a moral ought on the basis of
this is not a moral ought.
It is. You said it's a good. If you said something is good,
I said it's functional.
Just because it's good insofar, she's right here actually on the language. It's just functional. Something that serves some end, I don't think is necessarily a moral claim, right? You need to run faster than any of the other racers if you want to beat them in a track meet. It would be good for you to run faster than them if you want to win. That good there is not a moral good. I don't believe all normative claims are moral claims.
Yeah,
what word? Okay, we're doing chatter.
So
what
now
word
you're
do you want me to use when I say functional?
No, in a debate.
Oh, that's good. She figured it out. Okay, so he's obsessed with the good word here, and it's not working. This word needs to be ditched. She's correct. That word needs to be abandoned here. Something else needs to be advocated for, because this is not working. Yeah.
If you're arguing for your position, then you're necessarily arguing that we ought to follow your position.
Yeah, I think I said it's a necessity and unavoidable. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean it's a moral claim. It would be like realpolitik.
Well, then it's an ought, because do you think we ought to follow your
not
arguments?
Not all oughts are moral.
I didn't even know she knew this. Yes, correct. Not all oughts are moral. Not all normative claims are ethical claims. Correct.
Follow your arguments.
As in, like, should you do what I prescribe for society?
Ought we follow the true arguments versus the false arguments?
Sure.
Okay. Then you're using an ought right now to argue for your position.
Sure, but this isn't a moral claim.
You just argued that we ought to follow your position. That's
it's still not a moral claim.
It is.
It's not.
Oughts are morals if you're extending them.
If she was being more charitable, although at this point I think the charity would be exhausted. If she was being more charitable, she should say, I understand why you think this, but and then explain what I just did. The difference between not all normative claims or ethical claims or whatever. But if I was her, I don't think I would waste my time explaining it. I would just let this guy flounder, because
to everybody in the theoretical realm of listening to the debate.
Do you think that it's moral or not moral to have GDP? Do you think GDP is moral?
I'm pointing out that your position.
You answered my question.
I have a different system than you. It's not going to apply to my system.
Do you think that GDP is moral?
Everything in life is conceivably or potentially moral.
How is GDP moral?
Because you extended it to, in this argument, the highest good.
I did not.
You did walk it back after I asked for the highest.
She's literally said 15 times, not the highest good.
Good.
No.
Yes, you did.
I did not. I said for a nation state, I guess it's one of the higher goods. Yes. It's not the highest good. And I've said.
So, and what is the good?
Jay, I don't know how to explain to you over and over that this is not a moral claim. It's
You're saying that?
It's pragmatism.
You're saying that, but ought we follow your argument in pragmatism here?
If you want a flourishing society by and large.
So we ought, logically.
Sure, but
ought we logically?
It's not a moral claim.
It's not.
Is GDP a moral claim?
It can be depending upon the system.
How is GDP a moral claim?
In your system, you're arguing that you just said we ought to follow your arguments.
I don't know how many times to tell you this.
Yeah, but
I'm not making
confused.
a moral claim.
You are, and you're saying you're not.
You just keep telling me
Anytime you say that there's an ought,
that's not true.
That is true.
No.
It is.
No.
Even if you redefine it as functional.
Okay, how about this? You don't have to have a liberal society that has a high GDP. You're just going to get stomped and you'll be a failed nation state. It's neutral morally.
Yeah, but you're missing the point about highest goods for society. You're arguing that.
I'm not engaging in that yet.
Well, that's go ahead.
Oh no, just if you guys can just try to let each other finish your thoughts. But go ahead.
So this debate necessarily comes down to metaphysical claims and epistemical claims and ethical claims.
No.
Yes, it does. Because feminism is about morals, ethics, biology, society, social relations. You can't divorce ethics from that. Now, if you think you can, I'm happy to address that, but that's just going to get you in an even deeper bind.
I'm not saying that you can divorce these things. Of course, feminism
you just argued a minute ago that it's not moral.
GDP is not moral.
then you can't divorce these things. So you just contradicted yourself.
So there are lots of elements. Okay.
These people that are also like, if you want to have I don't know their history also, maybe these guys have debated before or talk shit online or something, but like, if you want to have an ultra contentious debate, then by all means do that. But at least know that that's the kind of debate that you are engaging in. If you're like, you just did a contradiction. You didn't walk that back. You walked that back. You didn't a contradiction. Like, you should be trying to collaboratively build towards whatever the argument is, because we haven't even gotten to a disagreement yet. We're just at like the functional language stage where we're like defining terms and trying to understand what the other person is saying. We haven't gotten to any actual substantive disagreement yet. It almost feels like listening to kind of, I feel like sometimes Andrew Wilson debates like this, where it's this hardcore obsession over words and spotting and like this internal critique and spotting contradictions and all that. It's like, Jesus.
There are lots of elements within feminism that do make moral claims, right? Lots of them. When I'm talking about something like an innovator scale, it's not a moral claim. It's real politics.
I understand you think that, but I'm pointing out that it is still moral. That's the argument I'm making.
Okay. Do you want to engage with the actual conversation now?
You saying that doesn't avoid the argument I'm making.
Okay.
I know that's what you're
Why
trying to do.
is GDP not
You haven't even made an argument yet. You're just arguing for defining terms. But whatever.
good for society, or is it?
I'm saying it depends on your standard of good, and that's what I'm asking you. What
what's your standard of good?
I think GDP can be great for a society, but it's not the highest good of society,
Sure,
such
I
as
agree
the
with that.
social cohesion of society. That's more important than who's making fiat money.
Okay, what do you think is the role of the nation state?
The nation state has the job and the duty to defend its people and to maintain a healthy society, to punish the wicked, and to reward virtue.
Sure, yeah, I would broadly
I feel like the first two here are going to be tied to GDP, but okay.
agree. It's to keep its citizens safe, right? Okay, how does it do that at a
But
foreign
I
policy
said reward
level?
virtue and punish vice.
Yes, you can.
So there's also necessarily an ethical component.
Those things also require money, prison and police and...
Sure, that's your claim.
Right, that's my worldview.
Yeah, I'm just engaging with it.
Right.
Okay, so then how does your nation state, in your worldview, protect itself from enemies?
It has a standing army.
Okay, and how does it fund that standing army?
Well, nations have gone into debt, or they have been prosperous and used their own treasuries, or they have raised money to go to war. So there's a lot of different ways that could happen.
Okay, and so what do you think is the right way to do that?
It's an oversimplification question because not everything in regard to warfare or...
This is debate pervertry. This is what it looks like when people accuse people of being like, oh, you're just a debate pervert, or you're just a debater, or whatever. This is that. How do you think you raise money as a country? What's the way to do that? Actually, that's an oversimplification fallacy. Actually, that's actually a fallacious reasoning you've engaged in. And it's like, can we just have like a normal, ordinary human conversation? Or is that impossible? Or...
History of civilizations is necessarily right or wrong. It's a question of what might be the best or the worst. So there can be scales. It's not
Would you
all
say
either
that
or.
there are some things that aren't moral necessarily, some of them are just pragmatic, and then there's some things that are moral?
Everything could potentially be moral, but some things are pragmatic, sure.
Okay, that's basically what I've been saying.
Yeah,
So
but
we
you were
got there.
appealing to the good of a nation state.
You were, again, because you were using the word good in a way that I wasn't meaning it, and even though I clarified multiple times that I meant functional, and I even said, what word would you like me to use to
but
describe this?
I understand that
concept?
you think that saying that because it's functional, it removes the ethical domain, but it doesn't, is the point I'm trying to make. Because the
language-
question that we're debating is whether feminism is good for society or not. That's
Sure.
an ethical, moral
Okay,
claim.
so going back to the
But
chatter.
we haven't even gotten there yet, right? We're just trying to understand like terminology and everything. Jesus.
thing, how we have to agree about words, okay? You're now essentially assigning to me what good means, and it's obvious that I'm not
No, I'm doing
agreeing.
internal critique is what I'm doing. You know what that
You're
is?
assigning...
Oh my God, dude. Internal critique is the most gross. Like, and also, this is not internal critique, okay? This is mental masturbation. Internal critique done well is going to be, again, a collaborative effort to build on, okay, you said that you believe, you said that A is greater than B and B is greater than C, but then you said that C is less than A. So help me understand, let's just go back, because it feels like logically these statements don't follow. So let's amend something you said earlier, figure out what you meant here so that we can make this make sense. Not like A is greater than B, B is greater than C, and I think C is less than A. Oh, actually, what you've engaged in here is a fallacious reasoning. The deductive reasoning actually doesn't follow syllogistically and propositionally logically. Your statements actually don't make any sense. It's like, Jesus, shut the f***. You're not getting graded. It's not high school debate, bro. No one's giving you an A+ for this assignment. It's not going to your permanent record. Holy fuck.
to me...
Do you know what internal critique is?
Tell me.
So I'm criticizing your position on its own grounds. That's an internal critique. That's what happens in debates.
Okay, what word would you like me to use when I am
That's not what happens in every single debate. That's not all debates, but...
describing this non-moral functional element that is...
The
of
one that
nation state?
makes a non-moral position makes sense of why feminism is a good for society.
We can get there, but again, we have to...
You're not going to get there.
Well, we can, but you're not even like... We're doing chatter. We're literally...
No,
we're doing
we're
what
at
Anna
the
wants
point
to do.
where you don't understand the issue. That's the point.
Oh, you haven't even gotten to the issue. Holy shit, this guy is actually a fucking moron.
Not true. All you've done at this point is just like you're just weaponizing.
No.
Also, as a kind of a meme thing, somebody at DGG have pointed this out. It's kind of funny. Kyle actually engaged in internal critique when she asked him, so how do you raise an army? what is the process by which you do that, right? Because he was challenging her use of GDP as a measure for good society. So she turned around and then she asked him, rather than stating that he was wrong, or rather than stating or asking him, specifically, like, what do you think is morally good? She just asks him, well, first she asks him, what do you think is a good thing? And he gives the 4 or 5 good things for a state. And then she asks him, how do you raise money for an army, or how would you do that, or whatever. That's actually an internal critique, funnily enough, but...
You admitted that the debate is about whether feminism is good for society. That's a moral, ethical domain right there.
Sure, there are some moral elements.
So when you make arguments about GDP,
arguments.
if it's not moral, then it's not relevant to the debate.
It's absolutely...
Like, this is just stupid. Like, we can have a debate on whether or not doctors are good for society, right? This is probably going to be a debate that's going to involve many moral or ethical elements, okay? But as part of this conversation, we might have a debate on whether or not we feel like there's high quality research that comes out of medical institutions, right? And arguably, depending on how you define equality and all this, it's probably not going to be very many ethical components to this, right? If we talk about the different types of research methodologies, if we talk about how things are funded, like it's probably just not, like, we're just turning out high quality research that is, giving us answers that allow us to make decisions that eventually will have ethical components involved in them, right? Science can't dictate morality to you, but it can inform decisions that you make that are fundamentally moral decisions. But
moral. What language would
It's
you like
moral?
to use? I said it's not. There is moral elements and there are some non-moral elements. GDP.
Is the debate today about something moral?
I don't know
Oh
if
my
I agreed
God.
to saying we're only going to talk about epistemics and morality. Good is, again, this word that we're basically doing chatter around, where you're assigning a label to it, and I haven't agreed to
I'm
it. We
trying
can
to figure out your position on the good.
My position on the good
No.
is it's holistic. There are things that are good because it's functional, and there are things that it's good because it's moral, right?
Is the debate today feminism about the good or the moral for society?
It's about, I guess, I would like
Yes.
to make the case for both.
The answer, okay. So
Functional
then
and
that
moral.
means that everything you've been saying for the last hour is wrong.
No, because I'm making a case for the functional element too.
But the fact that you're making the case for the functional element too doesn't matter if you're also talking about the moral.
You can make both arguments, and I would like
Correct.
to engage.
one informs the other, right? Like, if I say, for instance, back to the healthcare example, right? For the Dr. K stuff, Ayurvedic versus Western medicine or whatever, if we do this debate, if we say that the overall debate is whether or not healthcare is good for society, but then we have a debate inside about the difference between like Ayurvedic versus Western medicine, like, this is probably not going to involve as many ethical elements to it. We're just going to be talking about, like the quality of the research that we get, and then we're going to use that to inform the wider debate. But that in and of itself is going to involve a lot of things that aren't necessarily ethical statements. I don't even know how to explain this.
Age in the first one.
Right, because the other one is the one I'm looking at, and that's the problem for you.
It's not the problem for me.
Yes, right. No,
The
yes.
problem with this conversation is that essentially what you've done is you've assigned me a bunch of positions that I don't have.
No.
You've done a bunch of
Epic.
circle talk about words. You've done a couple of rhetorical flashbangs. And now we're stuck in a situation where we can't actually talk about the ideas, which is unfortunate because I was
Because
really
you're
looking
responding
forward.
to a you're chasing, you're like one foot is nailed, and then the other one is going in a circle, like a cartoon. You're like a cartoon character running in a circle.
If you want to like throw Agrippa's trilemma at me, you can, but I can throw it at you too. And if we do that, then there's no point. We're at an impasse. What do you think is good?
The good ultimately relates to God, the highest good.
Okay, the highest good. So is GDP in direction of that or not?
All things that exist are good in some way, and in some way relate to morals. But I do not believe that the GDP is the highest good for society.
No, why did
Okay.
you
What is the
use
highest good for society?
The health and flourishing of the society, which has to exist within some kind of patriarchal norm. That's the only way that it can function.
Gotcha.
And the ones that don't, they dysfunction.
Okay. And so in your mind, does GDP contribute to any of that?
It's just one component of life, just like, I don't know, the size of the nation's landmass is one component.
Sure, I would agree with that.
But it's not the highest good.
Why does he keep saying the highest good? Why does he keep this? This must be part of his dialogue tree, I guess.
Okay. Gotcha.
So what's the argument that feminism is good for society?
Feminism is good for society at a functional level because it increases innovator scale. I also think it's the right thing to do.
That's moral odds.
Yep, I'm giving you a moral claim now.
Okay, thank you. And why is it right for society?
It is right for society because I think in general we should try to treat others well, and I think limiting people's opportunity by force is bad for them. I don't think God wants that.
Okay, what God?
The Christian one.
Okay, where does he talk about this?
Forcing people to do things?
No, this idea of what the good is for society, because we have a lot of historical Christian societies.
Sure.
Were any of them feminist?
No, but I don't think in general that
Oh.
God advocates really strongly for a political system.
Really?
No.
What about when Israel was organized? Was that a political system? What did they
Like in
have?
1948?
No, in the Old Testament.
Old Testament.
That's a religious question that he just asked.
Was it? Yeah, it was a political society.
How was it organized?
I'm not a Jew.
What does that have to do
Wait,
with?
does the Bible talk at all about political organization, even in the Old Testament, even for Israel? I know they did. Obviously, they had a society, a kingdom, or whatever. But I don't know if the Bible calls out a political type of organization. I feel like the whole render unto Caesar story has kind of clarifies that there's a bit of a distinction between church and state insofar as Christianity is concerned. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
whether it was organized in a certain way or not.
It has nothing to do with my claim.
What does the Old Testament say about how God organized that society?
He gave them prescriptions about how to run their life from Moses.
How was that society organized?
It was organized, I believe, in a patriarchal society with matrilineal
correct.
heritage.
And it was a monarchy.
Yes.
A male monarchy.
Yep.
Okay. So in that regard, God was not feminist, right?
I've never said that God was feminist.
Well, I'm asking if there's a history example of where God organized a feminist society.
I mean, it's interesting because when you look at like ancient Judeo history, if you're not being presentist, it was like insanely progressive compared to like the pagans around them, like the Assyrians and Babylonians.
That's not what I'm asking.
Well, it is what you're asking.
You're calling
right?
it progressive, and I would just say it's healthy. So the fact that they,
sure,
had,
like
they had the Ten
God
Commandments.
seemed to advocate to some degree for a better treatment of women than any other society
I
around
agree,
them.
but that's not feminism.
To some degree, you could argue that it is if you agree with my definition, which is like the empowerment.
Well, but your definition is so
promotion of
elastic and broad that it could be anything except.
Did the commandments not allude to a political system? I don't believe so. Like Islam, I haven't read the Quran, but I'm pretty sure Islam explicitly dictates a political system, like in courts and everything and all that. But in Christianity, I think that the system is explicitly different than the religion itself. Like I don't think Christianity dictates necessarily any political system at all.
For what my position is. No, I don't, because I'm not agreeing that Old Testament patriarchal society is feminist. You just admitted it's not.
If you're not agreeing, why did we even define the words at the beginning?
Can you
of
name a
subject
feminist
them?
society
I'm not
that God
interested.
advocated?
I'm not interested.
God.
You appealed to God.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to treat women well.
Did God ever? That's not feminism. Now you're equivocating.
I'm not equivocating.
Yes, you are.
How am I equivocating?
You're changing, moving the goalposts as to what feminism is.
That's a completely different
so if
fallacy.
God has,
equivocating
so
or
if,
am I
if in
moving,
the
hold on,
law,
am I equivocating or am I moving the goalpost now?
It's both.
It's
You're
both.
equivocating on the word and moving the goalposts to make your position work. So if there's no feminist,
not what
if there's no
equivocating
feminist equivocating on the word,
That's not what equivocating
I know what
means.
equivocation means. Yes, it does. It means that two different understandings of a word. You're equivocating on the word.
Okay.
Feminism. And you're defining to say that if God in the Old Testament gives women rights, that's feminism. That's not what feminism is. Feminism is a modern movement, post-revolutionary
Then why did you
philosophy.
agree to my definition of feminism?
Because it's so broad that's fine if you want to defend that against patriarchy, but I'm arguing patriarchy against feminism.
So
and
all
what
you're
you
doing
appeal
now
to
is moving the goalposts by the originally agreeing to a
no.
definition of feminism, and now you're saying that can't work anymore because it's defeating my argument?
The Old Testament God and the New Testament God are the same God, and they never institute a feminist society. And women's rights are being made in the image of God, that women are protected now in that status.
What do you mean
is
by a
not
feminist
feminism.
society? What do you mean by a feminist society?
A matriarchal society
I'm not
or a
advocating that.
non-patriarchal society.
I've never advocated for either of these things.
Okay, but feminism has never been a societal goal in the Old Testament or the New Testament or the history of any Christian society.
Again,
so you have no
I haven't
examples of
advocated-
this.
I haven't advocated for any of these things. I don't.
You
need to.
appeal to God as your standard of the ought and the
said-
right, the moral right.
Yeah, it's a
right?
moral thing to treat
Correct.
women well.
And then I said, give me the
Shit.
examples of where that God ever instituted anything like what you're talking about in terms of
And I
feminism.
said
There's
in-
not.
w- that-
There's not.
There is, according to the definition you agreed to.
No,
for
there's
feminism.
not.
Yeah, the empowerment and promotion of femininity. Judaism,
That is not what is happening in the Old Testament.
Judaism
That
is
not.
the most progressive approach to femininity of all of the ancient
Modern rabbinic
religions.
Judaism is not the same thing as what's in the
But
Mosaic Law.
you asked for Old
admitted-
Testament examples, which
admitted
I just gave you one.
That's not rabbinic Judaism. You admitted that it's a patriarchal society. That's a
What do you
monarchy.
mean it's not rabbinic? You don't think Old Testament Judeo like?
No, it's not.
It's not
different.
rabbinic. What are you talking about?
It's not the same thing as
You don't
rabbinic
think that the
Judaism.
1200 BC society that was erected by King David wasn't a rabbinic society?
Rabbinic Judaism comes out of the 4th and 5th century when the Babylonian Talmud is collected and collated.
So you don't
That's
think
not,
that Old Testament at
is
all?
not rabbinic, no.
Okay.
Owned.
And it's patriarchal. So even if it was rabbinic, it wouldn't
That's
refute.
fine.
Then there's no examples of what you're talking about.
Well, the issue for me is that what you're doing is you're creating a false dichotomy. You're pretending like patriarchy and feminism can't coexist
Correct,
at the same
they
time.
cannot.
Of course they can. We live in one.
Being feminine is not the same thing as the movement of feminism.
I didn't say that it is. I said that
You
we
did.
are.
You said that femininity is promoted in the Old Testament, and you used that as a way to prove your
I
position.
said it empowered women and it promoted femininity. It empowered women by creating matrilineal lines of inheritance, and it promoted femininity by making a whole bunch of female figures be viewed as these like incredible characters to like look up to, like Ruth and Deborah and stuff like that.
Okay, well, there's a
which,
plenty-
according to
there's
the
plenty of-
definition you agreed to
there's
on
plenty-
feminism, would be feminism.
Then it wasn't, quote, progressive according to your view, because other societies worship the goddess, and that would be more progressive than what you said.
If you want, we can go back an hour and we can redo chatter, and you can make a new definition for feminism that you like more, so that you can apply it more narrowly if you'd like.
You have moved the
See, like this is like what Kyla did there is a collaborative approach to a conversation. I would have already given up and I would just be calling this guy a retard by now. Like, if you want, let's just go back and let's just redefine this so that we can move the conversation along, because we're just getting hung up on definitions right now.
I have not. I
From
wrote it
what
down.
feminism is
I wrote it down
to be
and you agreed to it.
anything that. So is the goddess feminism?
I don't know what
Is
the
goddess worship in the ancient pagan world, is that feminism?
It might be.
Okay,
I'm not
thank
sure.
you.
I don't know
So
anything
your
about.
view,
Hold on.
so your position is so elastic that it could encompass any possible
why did you
position.
agree to it?
It's unfault because the way you framed it was anti-patriarchy, and I'm fine
I
with
didn't
that.
frame it that
yes,
way.
you did.
I did not frame it that
the
way.
The terms of this debate
Do you wanna go back an
is
hour?
feminism good or is patriarchy good?
I wrote it down. Do you want to
The
go back
fact
an
that you
hour?
wrote it down just means that you misunderstand what you wrote down.
No,
That's even dumber.
The issue, rather than you just being bad faith for no reason,
No,
is
this
that
is, you don't even know what an internal critique is. So I'm not being bad
But
faith.
she literally did an internal critique to you earlier. Just because she doesn't have the debate terms memorized doesn't mean anything. Why would he even try to throw that in somebody's face? You actually didn't know what this. You didn't know what this debate term was. So actually, you have definitely like everybody can understand the concept of an internal critique, even if you haven't heard the phrase before. Like,
I've been debating for 25 years.
It's completely fine to know what terms are.
You don't even know what an internal critique is. So I'm not being bad faith. I've been debating for 25 years. It's not bad faith.
I've been debating for 25 years. That's even more pathetic that you're so absolutely dog shit at it. But to be fair, I haven't even heard the term internal critique until Andrew Wilson used it. But you can know what an internal critique is without knowing the phrase for it. Like,
it's completely fine to know what terms are, right?
Yes.
Sure, but in terms of debate, that's like 101, knowing what an internal critique is.
Okay. If we were having high school debate, you would be getting applause from the audience and points from the judges. But
I understand what like consistency checks are. I just didn't use the language internal critique, right? So if we want to go back an hour, you agreed to this idea of chatter, right? How we want to define concepts, agree to them so that we can talk about
Women
ideas.
prattle or chatter?
what?
I'm just kidding.
Right? How we want to define concepts, agree to them so that we can talk about
Women
ideas.
prattle or chatter?
Like, you've been the one prattling and being nonsensical the entire time. Like, you're demonstrating the extremes at both ends of the male IQ spectrum, just not at the end you think you are.
I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So if you agree
And we bring out the sunglasses. Nice.
to that, and then you agree to the terms, you can change them later. I'm just going to be good faith. You can change them later if you want to. Let's just go back to the terms again and narrow it down to what we can agree to of what feminism and patriarchy means. Because now, like, all you're doing
I
is...
gave a very precise definition for patriarchy, right?
Sure, I did
And you
too.
gave a very loose definition as to what you think feminism is, which could encompass conceivably anything that helps women. And that's an ambiguity fallacy.
Then provide a different definition.
Also, like, just so you know, anytime you use the term fallacy in a debate, you're basically a mongler. Like, no good faith person that's interested in having a real conversation is ever, actually, you engage in this is actually a fallacy. Like, no one cares.
And don't agree to it.
In my opening statement, I said that I believe feminism is a revolutionary philosophy that destroys society. It was brought about to change society in toto and ultimately to serve into oligarchical designs and people who, and I gave sources. You can read the Rockefeller's authorized biography. They have a whole discussion of Abby Rockefeller.
Right now? Should we take a break and read that whole biography right now?
Third wave feminism until
Sorry,
16.
how is this not just as ambiguous as the one? It's just a revolutionary
Just as ambiguous.
system?
I'm literally giving you the people who funded it and the actual names of the people, like Cell 16.
I don't know why you're appealing to, I don't know why you're appealing to authority right now. None of this matters.
No, that's not an authority. That's the people involved. It's not an authority appeal.
Yeah, if the
you don't know
people
what an
who you
authority
think
appeal
funded
is.
them is an authority for the
I gave
definition
the
of
people
feminism.
involved, like Abby Rockefeller,
That
who
would
was
be an
herself.
authority.
No, it's not.
Then why are you citing them?
It's a person who's in the movement. It's not just the funder.
Yeah, you're appealing to authority.
You don't
right
know
now.
what an appeal to, that's a fact. It's not an appeal to authority. You don't know what an
You are
appeal to authority
citing them
is. This is so
for a
silly.
definition of feminism.
Yeah, that's not an appeal to authority.
This is a guy who literally, like, you pull up and you're like, hey, bro, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm preparing for my debate. And it's like, really? What are you reading there? It looks like a short thing. It's a list of every single fallacy ever. And it's like, how's that going to help you? Anytime my opponent does anything that's a logical fallacy, I have it instantaneously memorized and able to call it out and label it in real time. And it allows me to dominate all of my debate opponents.
Authority.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes,
You
it
don't
is.
know what an appeal to authority. If I said my position is true because I cite the Rockefellers, that would be an appeal to authority, and
You're
that's a
saying
fallacy.
This definition
is an evidence
true
goofus.
because of the Rockefellers. If you want,
No, I'm not. I'm telling you
If
the
you wa-
history of the movement,
that
which
has
you don't
nothing-
even know
again,
about.
I've asked you to define feminism, and now
And
what
I'm
you're
giving
saying-
you the history of that movement,
I'm
which is
asking you for a
three
definition.
waves.
Why- I don't-
Are there three waves of
Doofus,
feminism?
why can't you give me a
Are there
definition?
three waves of feminism?
There's 4.
Okay, so there's 3.
Oh, you didn't know that? That's crazy.
So there are 3, correct?
So there are 3. He did the, teacher, can I go to the bathroom? And then she says, yes. And then you get up and you leave. And she's like, what are you doing? And you're like, I asked if I could go to the bathroom. It's like, you should have said, may I?
There's 4.
Right, but that would mean there's also 3, even though there's a 4th, right?
That's true. 3 is less than 4.
I
Good
know
job,
that,
Jay.
but the fact that there's 4, there's
Did you go to, like, this, I'll kill me,
still
dude.
3 that have happened, right?
Irrelevant to any
Irrelevant.
modern
Wait a
feminism.
minute. Is that an appeal to authority?
What authority am I citing right now? I know
Well, you're
really-
citing facts that you think are appeals
Which
to
authority
authority.
have I cited? Name one. Name one.
You should have seen Jacob last night. What about him? He has one eye. He has one eye, really? And then you meet Jacob the next night. He's like, wait, he has 2 eyes. Yes, so he has 1 eye, right? Well, yeah, but I mean, like, usually when you say he has a thing, the implication is he has only that thing. Really? So when you say you have $5 in your bank account and you have $6, do you not have $5? So when I ask you, hey, I want to eat lunch, do you have $20? And you say yes, does that mean you only have $20? Well, no, I guess not. So when I say he has 1 eye, why would you assume he only has 1 eye? That was actually, you did a hasty generalization fallacy there. It's like, oh my God.
one authority I've cited, Jay.
You think,
go, name one authority I've
you
cited.
don't understand.
Jay, name one authority I've cited.
I'm making a joke because
What's
you think appealing to a fact is appeal to authority. Those are two different things.
That's not true.
Yes,
in fact, when you were citing Rockefeller, as the definition for feminism,
no, the funder is not the definition, you idiot.
Then why are you appealing to them in any way?
To prove the history of the movement and what it teaches. Yes, I just gave you the example. I've been debating for 25 years. I know what the appeal to authority is. That's one right there.
Okay, so when you appeal to irrelevant people that sound authoritative,
it's not irrelevant.
Aren't relevant, the history of feminism isn't relevant to you giving me a definition of feminism that I can operate on.
Is it a historical movement?
Can you give me
is it a historical movement?
Yeah, of course.
Then the history is relevant to the definition, you idiot.
Then give me the definition. You can do it, Jay.
Nice if we can.
You can do it, Jay. I believe in you.
It's like talking to a 5-year-old.
Yeah. Well, you're a big boy, so this should be really easy for you to define feminism. Go ahead.
Feminism is a historical movement that's concerned with the rights of women, including egalitarianism, the idea that women and men are equal. If we go back to Wollstonecraft, if we go back to the suffrage movement, if we go back to the notion of women not being married at certain ages as children. So the first wave.
Oh my God. Andrew Wilson's wife debating. This is glorious. Epic JW. I can't even take it. 45-degree tilted, eyes laughing emoji, tears, ha ha ha.
Not just suffragism, but they also wanted to not have child brides and that kind of stuff.
I'm really proud of you. You got two things.
Listen,
one more.
I'm not, shut up and let me finish. I'm not done. I'm not done. They also wanted better work hours. They wanted women to have inheritance rights. They wanted women to be able to get jobs and they wanted women in the workforce and to be in positions that they didn't have. So they wanted certain social rights that women did, like voting, right, suffrage right. Those are all first wave.
Yep.
Okay.
This is your definition of feminism? Okay, I'm writing it down.
Are you serious?
I'm so dumb.
You asked for the history of it.
I didn't ask you for the history. I asked you for a definition.
You said that it's historical.
Okay. She literally did not ask for the history. She's just asking for a definition. She never said, give me the history. That's you. You're projecting. Jesus.
And I'm giving you the movements.
I'm not asking for the history. I'm asking you.
You said it is historical, so I have to go back to the people. You're so dumb that you can't conceive of a position apart from the people who came up with the position.
So Israel. I can define Israel without going through the entire history of Israel. Feminism, while it does have... Yes, of course you can.
Really? You can't define anything without going through the entire history of the thing itself?
This is so silly because you admitted it's a historical movement, therefore it can't be divorced from the people in history.
I'm not asking
Do you think it came out of the sky? Did it come into people's minds out of the sky or from the people?
You're doing a false dichotomy again.
What are you, dude? You don't even.
You're acting like you can't define it without the history. I'm telling you.
Correct. It's a historical movement by your own definition.
That doesn't mean that you can't make a definition for the word.
Yes,
so
you have to go to the people. Where do you think words come from? From people. They don't drop out of the sky. They come from people.
I know you can do this. You can define a word without giving me a 5-minute monologue on the history.
No, you can't.
So there's no way for you to define feminism.
Would you go to a dictionary? That's an appeal to authority.
It's not an.
No, it's not even. It's not a fallacious appeal to authority. What are we even talking about? Does the dictionary have 5 minutes of history for every single defined word?
Okay, there are appeal to authorities that are fallacious, and there are appeal to authorities that are non-fallacious.
Oh, like when I give the examples of the
Rockefeller as a funder is not an appeal.
It's not just a funder. Abby was involved in Cell 16. She's not just a funder.
That doesn't matter.
It does because it came from them.
That doesn't mean that she's a relevant authority to cite.
The one who funded it and got it going at Chicago University is not relevant?
Portions of the third wave, yes.
Correct.
That doesn't mean that
no, it comes out of her money.
No, that doesn't
millions of dollars at Chicago University.
That doesn't mean that she's the definer of feminism.
I didn't say she was. I said she's...
You cited her as a definer of feminism.
She's involved in the third wave movement.
What's the definition of feminism, Jay?
Oh
You
my
can do
gosh,
it.
you're so stupid.
I've got 3 things from you so far.
Even do a
feminism equals rights of women. Men and women are equal.
Admitted
labor rights. I've got 3 things. What else is feminism?
Inheritance in terms of first wave feminism. I mentioned child age of marriage as another element of it.
Okay, so
in terms of the first wave.
Civil rights. Let's just call those civil rights.
That's not civil rights. It's oh my gosh. It's prior to the civil rights movement. You idiot.
That doesn't mean it's not civil rights, Jay. I'm just trying to create.
What the fuck?
A way.
Civil rights. It's age of marriage as another element of it.
Okay, so
in terms of the first wave.
Civil rights. Let's just call those civil rights.
That's not civil rights. It's oh my gosh. It's prior to the civil rights movement. You idiot.
That doesn't mean that it's not civil rights, Jay. I'm just trying to create a way to make this succinct so we can get a fucking definition because you don't like mine, which is fine.
I said yours.
That's why I'm just trying to now get a new
broad.
one. That's fine.
Then give it your own.
I'm giving the historical. I don't need my own definition.
Yes,
it's your position.
You don't need your own. Oh, he truly is from the Andrew Wilson School of Debate. So he's not ever going to actually have a position. He's just going to endlessly critique other people's positions. Oh, okay.
Goofus. No. You debate positions like when you debated Jim Bob, and you tell people to define your position. This is how silly you are.
No, Jay.
You gave a broad definition.
I gave you a definition, and you
which
don't
is too
like
broad.
it. That's fine. Make your own definition, and then we can work from there.
I don't need to make a definition.
Yes, you do. If you have rejected my definition, you now have to supply one.
Yes, I'm going to the people who came up with it. Correct.
Rockefeller didn't come up with it.
I said Mary Wollstonecraft in my opening statement is one of the first feminists in modern society.
Do you want to supply a definition? This doesn't matter, Jay.
What? Does he think he was cooking there? What? Okay.
So the people who came up with it don't matter.
They matter if you can get to getting a definition out of your fucking mouth. We've got We've got 4 elements of feminism now. Okay, so we've got rights of women, like men and women are equal, egalitarianism, labor rights, and civil rights. Is there anything else you would like to add to that definition?
As we move into modernity, we get more radical versions of this, particularly with Cell 16, which becomes almost a revolutionary terrorist movement, which wants to engage in radical action and Skittles rights, shall we say. So they move into it being Skittles as well.
Okay, so
now, I don't care if you reject
trans rights.
I don't care if you reject that or accept that. Because I'm looking at this as a historical movement, because guess what? Feminism is a historical movement. That's what we're debating.
You might not believe me, Jay. I'm so disappointed about this conversation. I talked about chatter because I was interested in a good discussion.
You keep saying chatter doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I did an internal critique.
She should ask him she should take a step back and ask him, what do you think I meant when I said chatter? What do you think I meant when I said that?
You didn't know what that was. And then I start going to the history of feminism, and then you're floundering.
Right now. You're just saying
I'm just
stuff
saying
right
stuff.
Yeah.
There we go.
So going to chatter, the reason I asked you about it is so that we could have a decently good conversation, so that we weren't quibbling over the definition of words, and we could actually engage in conversation. If the only way that you can debate for the last 25 years is to just quibble about semantics of words, I'm sorry, you're not a king debater. You're just bad faith.
You asked me the last 30 minutes to define a word. So you're the one that's quibbling about semantics.
I'm not quibbling. I'm literally not quibbling. I am writing down your words.
That's how could you possibly say that you're engaging in semantics when the conversation is over what the definition of a particular term is? That is semantics. What are you doing?
Oh, so if you're writing it down.
I'm granting, it's not semantics because I'm just granting your definition.
I thought it was semantics. No, it's not.
It's not semantic debating because I'm not disagreeing with you on your definition. I'm literally begging.
Why is he pretending like she's the one stumbling through this conversation?
Granting your definition.
I thought it was semantics. No, it's not.
It's not semantic debating because I'm not disagreeing with you on your definition. I'm literally begging you to just give me one. I'm begging you at this point because you don't like mine. So let's give yours.
I don't care what your definition is, because all I have to do is critique your position internally and point.
Oh, so this is like the Andrew Wilson school of brain dead shit. Like you're not here to debate or do anything. You're just here to endlessly critique another person's side. That's it. You have no interest whatsoever in actually having a conversation. Okay, that's glad we figured that out.
So
you do have to care about my definition if you're going to do an internal critique. That's the fundamental of a fucking internal critique. Is that
now you do know about. So you just learned about internal critique about 10 minutes ago.
She just learned the name of the concept, but if you knew what an internal critique was, you would recognize she already internally critiqued your position. So clearly she's familiar with the concept. She doesn't know the name of it. Semantics, actually. Haha.
And now you're going to lecture me on it.
You're a really good teacher, Jay. What can I say? So
the debate's over.
You do care about.
She admitted she's learning.
You do care about feminism and my definition of it because you need it for the internal critique, which you've already acknowledged.
I don't care about it because
but now you've rejected my definition of feminism. So again, I know being mean to women is your fallback.
Oh, now there we go. Ad hominem. Now so there we go.
It's not an ad hominem. I didn't say that you're
mean to you.
No.
First of all, that's not an ad hominem. Being mean to somebody is not an ad hominem. It's an ad hominem when you disregard their argument based on a character attack. So her saying that he's being mean is not her engaged in an ad hominem fallacy. She's just pointing out that he's being mean, which he has been, by the way.
I didn't say you're wrong because you're being an asshole. I just said
and she even knows it. Jesus, what the fuck? Somebody injected all the Plato.stanford.edu philosophy into her brain. Jesus.
An asshole.
Now you're getting your feelings.
That's not an ad hominem.
Get your feelings hurt? Nobody said their feelings were hurt. The only person who sounds like their feelings are hurt are you, who is literally going blah, 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 blah. Like, bro, are you okay?
My feelings are fine.
It's not an ad hominem.
No. Insulting people and being mean is an ad hom. You should know this. You can Google it. Google it at home. An ad hom is when you use the insult of a person to discredit them. So if I said, Jay, you're wrong because you're mean, now I'm ad homing you. As a debate bro of 25 years, you should know your fallacies better. You've already been wrong.
He was wrong. He got blown the fuck out. He just kind of got blown the fuck out. But
about multiple fallacies.
Really?
And you can't. Yes. And you can't define feminism. Do you want to get there?
You already admitted that I gave you 4 elements.
It seems like you have more.
So
5 actually.
I think that you actually think like maybe a 100 IQ person, that the way that you define something is you literally just look at a definition in a dictionary and then you just list it out, and that's the definition of the word.
That's false. Really? I've never said that.
Because I'm giving you the entire context of the history of feminism, and you're saying I need a fucking definition.
Yes.
As we're working through the actual history of it and the definition of what it is. You admitted that it's a historical movement.
That has nothing to do with you giving me a definition.
You admitted that it's a historical movement, so the history has to do with it. You idiot!
I don't need the history for you to give me a definition. You idiot!
We have to go to the people who are the philosophers of it.
No, you don't.
Like Mary Wollstonecraft and her position. Like egalitarianism.
You can just define it.
I'm defining it for you. I've been defining it. You just keep yapping and melting down over your notes.
Well, the issue is that it has taken me pushing you to be specific over and over for 45 minutes. We have 5 points now.
Because you don't have anything other than this.
That's false.
How does any of this prove your position that feminism is good for society? As a feminist, you're showing us that you're not good for society. So you're actually proving my point as you yap and argue. You're proving my point.
Example of an ad hom.
That is an ad hominem. But it's an illustrative ad hominem. Yes,
that's true. It was a very creative ad hom. Okay, so we have 5 points that you would like to define feminism. Is there any other points that you want to define feminism with?
Yes, the people who funded that also said that they like the movement because it destroys the nuclear family, gets women in the workforce, taxes the other half of the population, and reduces the population because there's less families.
How do you want to summarize that?
Why do I have
destruction
to,
of
you can't
nuclear
remember
family.
what I just said?
So feminism
You can't
is-
remember 4 sentences I just said?
No,
You can't, do you not have a definition? If you can't summarize what you just said, it makes it sound like you don't even remember what you said, which makes it sound like you're inventing the definition on the spot. What's happening here?
I can remember. I just want to like, you're just very yappy. And so I'd
Are you okay? Hello?
Remember what I just said?
feminism
You can't
is-
remember 4 sentences I just said?
No, I can remember. I just want to like, you're just very yappy. And so I'd like to
I'm
make it
yappy.
succinct.
Yes,
Yes,
I'm yappy.
to give me a
Yes.
definition, you've had to give me an entire century's worth of history, even though.
Like when you admitted that it's a historical movement, so it can't be,
Here's the
it
thing,
can't be
Jay.
divorced from the
You know
historical
what you could
people?
have done? You could have just said to me, so that we can move forward with this conversation. Feminism is
Yeah, but I'm not going to grant
rights
you.
of women, men
It's
and
a
women are
debate.
equal, labor
So I'm not
rights,
going to
civil
grant
rights,
you
and trans rights.
simple answers in a debate.
Why wouldn't
to
you
help
just define a word?
I'm not going to get... This is the Andrew Wilson method of debating. Jesus.
I
Well,
don't
if we
owe
can,
you a
if we can,
definition.
maybe we could avoid some of the insults, and if we can, also allow people to finish their thought. Let's try to
Okay, are you
not
happy?
do interruptions, but go ahead.
Yeah,
So
are
I
you?
want to know how any of this helps your case to prove feminism is good for society.
Well, we can get there now that we've defined feminism.
Okay.
So destruction of nuclear family is another one that you would like to add to
Sure.
the definition of feminism.
That's why the people who fund it matter, is because they say that.
Okay, I would argue that the destruction of nuclear families is not inherent to most feminist movements and is bad. So I reject that part of your definition.
So the people who want that in society and say that it does that don't matter. Because you have
They're not the feminism that I'm fighting
because you have a definition that is so elastic to make it anything that you think helps women. And that's why I've said you've already lost the debate, because you're elastic.
The
It's not specific.
empowerment, well, you define
that's why I asked you
empowerment
that
of women and
statement.
promotion of femininity. So empowerment means things
That
like
is
removing obstacles.
ambiguous.
And promotion of
It's
femininity would be
ambiguous.
like making feminine traits viewed as respect-worthy.
Like submitting to authority in men? Is that a feminine trait?
No, I wouldn't say so.
So it's not clear. It's ambiguous.
I would say
So it's-
submission is
You have to
feminine.
define it.
I would say submission is feminine, but I don't think
to-
it's to men specifically. No.
Oh, okay.
It would be like to any authority, right?
To any authority?
Yeah.
Are most authority men?
A lot of them are, but some
So
are
it would
women.
be to men.
Nope, it would be to authority.
How can he be so arrogant, but he hasn't earned it at all?
But men aren't a class. Men aren't a class.
But most authorities are men, and they are submitting to that, right?
So?
So it would be.
Yeah, but the idea, okay, you love semantic fights.
No,
Are you okay?
it's called a debate.
I can do that too. If you want me to just like mock you every time you stutter, we
It's
can have a
just,
super fun
it's just how
conversation.
debates work. I'm sorry.
Mock-
She shouldn't have even granted that. I don't think she stuttered at all. This guy's said so much less.
People when they
is part,
stutter is not
rhetoric is part of debate. Yes,
This
it
is not rhetoric.
It
This is just you being
If you're watching
creative.
Oxford Union debate, they make fun of each other.
I'm fine with you making fun.
Do they at the Oxford Uni debates? Maybe they do. I don't know. I feel like we've watched a couple things. What is this guy saying?
I'm boomerang, man. I've never literally used Discord. I usually just ask someone to message someone on Discord.
He's trying to get me on? Uh-oh.
Fun of each other.
That's what I've been doing.
Okay. Would you like to have a productive conversation too, or do you want to just? We can circle the drain.
I'm having a great time.
That's fine. We can just continue to circle the drain.
And how does this prove feminism is good for society?
Okay, so I already said I would reject the destruction of nuclear family. I don't think it's central to most feminism. I think most,
Was it
especially,
central to self-16?
it sounds like it was, but I would say most fourth wave feminists, for example, are not very pro destruction of the nuclear family. In fact, there's like an entire like barefoot pregnant movement within the fourth wave that is very much about embracing being pregnant, being motherhood, and like promoting that as a good thing.
Is that the attitude that most feminists in society have?
I would say a lot of young feminists are
Are
directly.
they the most?
I wouldn't.
No, they're not.
Most also don't want to destroy the nuclear family.
Well, in academia and in
Most
society in
feminists
general,
want to get married and have kids.
does this worldview promote, in general, in society, in academia, and in the corporate world, the destruction?
I hope she doesn't answer this question. What worldview? We haven't even defined what the fuck we're talking about yet. How could you even talk about a worldview? What worldview are we even speaking of?
Of the family, or does it
No.
have it?
It tends to promote it. Yeah, they want
It
women to be
promotes,
mothers
really.
who can also.
Feminism promotes women in society in general.
I would say fourth
women
wave
being
feminism is very pro mother.
No,
Yeah.
I asked you about the majority of feminism.
Most feminists are fourth
that's
wave.
institutionalized.
Yeah, most
How do you-
institutional academics are fourth wave.
And they want people to have kids.
Yes.
They're not antinatalists.
No, some of them are, but most of them
In
are not.
institutions?
Yes.
No, that's crazy.
I don't know what to tell you. I've been reading lots of
Well,
fourth wave
I've been in
feminists.
academia. I've been in institutions.
too.
I've never met a feminist in academia or in institutions who thinks that there should be more people and more kids.
Never.
They all believe in depopulation, the ones that I've met.
That's crazy. I've just met lots of feminists that don't believe that. And regardless, those feminists who are like basically death cult feminists, I'm not interested in advocating for the worldview.
That's fine.
I don't have to own that.
But the history of feminism.
Just like you don't have
and
to own, like,
most,
Protestants or
most
something.
feminism, right? So you've got a nuanced feminism, I guess, is your take, right?
I just have like a pretty traditional like fourth wave feminism.
Okay. So, but it's not historic feminism, right? Or is it first wave?
It's fourth wave,
So it's tied to history?
of course, because there's
Oh,
waves.
so it is tied to history.
Yeah, but the waves,
Oh, but
the essentials of the waves is that
there's.
there's. I've never ever said that feminism isn't tied to history. You've just made that up.
I think we could go back about 20 minutes. So you can do what I do. You know, we go back 20 minutes where you said that the history doesn't matter.
I
and
said
you
for
need a
your definition, it doesn't matter. And you can hold
You
your
just
frame.
literally,
Do this.
you have
Jay,
doublethink
hold
going
your
on.
frame.
Have you read 1984?
You can hold
Have you
your
read
frame. I
1984?
have,
Right. Do you know what
yes.
doublethink is?
Yes.
It's the ability to contradict within a couple minutes.
I didn't
and it just
contradict.
goes-
If you remember, we can roll back the tape. We were talking about defining.
think
and I cared-
definitions are
Can I finish
relative?
my thought, or are you just going to interrupt me?
Because I'm trying to,
Can I finish my
I'm trying
thought?
to hone
Can I
in
finish
on
my
what
thought?
this weird mistake is, because it's weird.
Guys, if we can at least, we'll let the insults go. Okay, if you guys want to insult each other, we'll allow that. But at least let each other finish
Okay.
their thoughts. Go ahead.
Okay. The reason that we went into the history and why I said I don't care about the history is I was asking for a functional definition so we could move past that part of the conversation. I always acknowledge that history was part of the feminist movement and it's tied to it.
I reject that there is a definition divorced from history.
I've never said that there's a definition divorced from history. I said I don't need the history. I said I don't need the history lesson. I don't need the history lesson.
You asked me for that.
You gotta let me finish, Jay.
You asked me because you're lying. You asked me for that divorce. You said divorce from history. What is your definition? That's what you said.
Yeah, I didn't want the history.
Thank you. So you just contradicted yourself.
No, I didn't contradict myself.
You're a machine of contradiction.
Desperate. You're so desperate. You're like, God, how do I get this win? I asked for you to stop giving me all of the history and just give me a definition so we can move the fuck on.
I don't accept that there is a definition of divorce from history, and you just admitted that.
So you don't have the brain capacity to define something without a 5-minute monologue about the history.
You just admitted you can't do that.
Define Israel. Are you going to go back 3,000 years to define it?
Correct, yes, because it's an ancient historical nation. Yes,
so
it's not the current Israel. Not really. It's not. There was no continuous existence. What does that even mean?
Can't define Israel without giving me a 10-minute monologue.
It's a false analogy because feminism is a modernist movement. It's a modern movement. It's not an ancient civilization.
That doesn't matter.
If feminism is a modern movement, then why are you giving me the historical definitions for it?
Matter. You just saying it doesn't matter just shows your lack of
is not
intellect.
All a false analogy.
You are melting down right now because you contradicted yourself.
I'm melting down because
2 minutes.
you said that you had 25 years of debate history and you can't get a single fallacy
correct. Look at you. You're melting down. You're spiraling.
How is that a false analogy? How is that a false analogy, Jay?
Because it's a modern movement. It's not an ancient civilization.
What does that have to do with anything when it comes to comparing history for definition?
And in debates, contradictions are what make you lose.
To do with the false analogy. How is that a false analogy?
That's how you lose a debate, correct.
How is that a false analogy?
Contradicting is where you lose the debate.
So you can define Israel without giving me the centuries of history. Is that what you're telling me?
I didn't say that. You just said that.
You said it's a false analogy.
You said
it's a false analogy. I never said that.
You said that. So you're yapping because you got caught.
I didn't get caught.
You did.
Holy shit.
You said that history. No. You said history doesn't matter. Give me your definition, and then you just said history matters. It's part of the definition.
I didn't. I did not say history matters as part of.
No. You did. Yes, you did.
Part of debating.
Wait, what? When did you say that? What?
Part of debating is holding frame, right? Would you agree?
No, he can't agree to anything.
When you did that, is that holding frame or what is that?
No, that was making fun of you, obviously.
Okay, right.
So part of debating is holding frame.
Like putting dongs in your mouth. Is that holding frame? I don't know.
No, that's funny. We're all laughing about it. Yes, it's
or are
funny.
we laughing at you?
Kind of the same thing. That's kind of what performers do, right? Yeah. So part of debating is holding frame.
Is any of this going to prove that feminism was good for society?
We literally can't get there because you are still quibbling.
You make my case.
I'm not making.
Wait, somebody linked this earlier.
Had a materialistic paradigm, and I said, well, I don't accept your Christian theism. I believe in, say, just rank materialism.
5 years old.
And I still do logic. My response to that person would be, well, yeah, you can
hour
do
and
it
40
in your
minutes?
life, but actually the justification for doing logic is itself actually impossible and incoherent if you were to be consistent with conflicting presuppositions.
Okay. So, I take it that, I take it that you think that this argument is being similar in heritage to Kantian arguments, such as we find in the Critique, like, for instance,
it's only right. So it's only similar to Kant in the fact that the form of the argument is the same, just like the form of the argument is the same with Gödel and incompleteness set theory arguments. But what's different with Kant is that we don't psychologize it. We're not saying that the structures or the category. Basically, if you want to make it simple, what Kant is saying about how the mind has transcendental preconditions that structure reality, we think that that's the mistake of Kant in terms of humanizing it and psychologizing it. And it really would make more sense if he attributed that to the mind of God, basically.
Okay, so just to be clear, and so what Kant's saying, and because presumably not everybody's read Kant, and certainly right. I imagine not everybody right now will. So what Kant's doing in the Critique, I mean, it's one of the most complicated and sort of pivotal books of philosophy in general, I guess, Western philosophy in general, probably right. the piece of philosophy in the Enlightenment. But what Kant is doing to some, so I'm going to not do justice to it in this brief summary, I'm just trying to say. But what Kant's up to some extent, is saying he's responding to skeptics who are making the claim that you couldn't know any synthetic truths a priori.
Right.
Listen, fuck Kant and fuck philosophy. If anybody, listen, here's what you do. Go to fucking transcendental idealism, Wikipedia bullshit, read like the first 3 sentences. When somebody brings up Kant, go, just checking real quick. Do you speak German? And if they say no, they've probably never read Kant and they don't know anything about it. And then just fucking go crazy and they'll stutter and they'll lose. And then you'll be the Giga Chad, okay? Because fuck all that shit.
Making your case. Again, just an ad hom. You love fallacies. My favorite thing about you is that you cite fallacies constantly. You don't know what they mean, and you can't define them properly.
Like how history is not part of feminism.
How is it a false analogy? To compare Israel, defining Israel?
Because it's an ancient nation state.
Why does
feminism is a modern political social revolutionary movement? They don't compare.
So why does
there is no modern Israel? Like, she's not asking for the definition of ancient Israel. Like,
extent of the length of history make them disanalogous.
You've already lost the debate because you admitted that the definition can't be divorced from the history, and then you said the opposite. That means you've massively contradicted yourself within the last 5 minutes.
Again, you're just making shit up. I'm glad that the made-up narrative of the story...
heard you.
Okay,
so
I'll do this. Jay just lost the debate because he's strawmanning me and putting words in my mouth that didn't happen. Wow, I'm really good at debating. Do you want to go back to the actual conversation?
Sure.
Okay, so why is it falsely analogous when you're saying that to define words, you must include the entire history to define the word? Why is it disanalogous to compare feminism to Israel? I asked you to define feminism, and I asked you to define Israel, and I asked you if you could define Israel without the 3 centuries of history. And you said, well, it's different. It's a false analogy.
It's a false analogy.
Why is it a false analogy?
Because they're 2 totally different things.
Oh.
And you already admitted that feminism is a historical movement and that it can and can't be divorced from the history.
So is Israel.
That's making my point, you goofus.
No, it's
yes,
not.
It is.
I'm saying you can obviously define Israel without going through 3 centuries, which you agreed to. That's why you don't.
It's a false analogy because
you won't define Israel with the 3 centuries because it's just long. It's just long.
It's an ancient
Whereas
nation state.
modern feminism only has 100 years. So I can give the history of that, but I can't give the history of Israel to define it because it's too long, essentially. That's your argument. That's what. Yes, that is your argument. It is not falsely analogous. And also, comparing 2 different things is the point of fucking analogies.
The more that you talk, it makes my whole case here that feminism is a net negative for society. Thank you for representing
Honestly,
feminism.
all you're doing is making me be like, maybe the red ones are right and men got to be out of power because they cannot keep up. If this is what like 2 masters and a philosophy degree do,
right? You literally contradicted yourself with
I think the conservatives are right. Don't go to college, guys. You're going to end up like this. Not good.
I don't recommend people go to college, by the way, because you are the people that teach at college. So you're
like, what happened? Like, sexism used to be the domain of the intellectual man, right? People like Freud, like physicists, like these people were womanizers, were sexist. Like when a guy was like, I hate women, he was probably about to say some real smart shit. Now, the people that are sexist are like the biggest, like, positive arguments for hardcore rad femme society because they're like the most retarded fucking men ever. Where did our enlightened sexists go? Holy fuck.
You're like the college professors I debated, the women I debated, you're like them. So they should go to college if you want them to be in your position, right?
No, if they end up anything like you, they should definitely not go to college. You're like, I had a philosophy degree and I don't know what fallacies are.
Did I say that?
Basically,
was that a cut down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try again.
This would be a perfect moment to read a couple chats here. We have Kat, who gifted 50 memberships. Thank you so much, Kat. Guys, W's in the chat for Kat. Thank you for the gifted 50 whatever memberships. Robert Tanner, thank you for the gifted 50 whatever memberships. Thank you so much. We also have Rachel Wilson in the building. Thank you for the gifted 5 memberships. Really appreciate it. And then we have a couple chats coming in here through Streamlabs. Let me get those pulled up. If you guys want to get a message in, it's $99 and up. We have Intel Wild. Oh, it's coming in as a TTS.
Intel Wild donated $100. Not so bright. Do you like BDSM because you were getting spanked by Jay?
Ah, classic. When you can't defeat a woman, you just have to sexually
like when you do the
degrade her and
dongs in your mouth like that. Is that a good example of what you're talking about?
When I'm sexually
I can't defeat
degrading
a woman,
myself.
so you put dongs in your mouth because it's funny.
You can't defeat a woman without sexually degrading her and then making a joke.
Like when you put dongs in your mouth. Is that sexually degrading?
That was myself.
Oh, by yourself. Okay. Right. So it's all subjective, like relativism.
Usually you can make jokes about yourself that
Do you believe in relativism too?
Yeah, I do.
Really? Is it self-refuting?
No.
Is relativism true?
But depends on what you mean by true.
Is everything relative?
Yes, but that doesn't mean it's like subjective.
It means the same thing.
No, it does not.
Yes, it does.
No, it
Something
does
being
not.
totally relative means that it is subjective.
No.
How do you not know this? This is a common mistake for retards to make, but like things can be relative versus universal and things can be subjective versus objective. These are 2 different categories of things. You can have truths that arguably change, it's hard to conceive of, but you can have objective truth that is relative over time period. Yeah, that's just that can be the case. You can also have you can also have like an absolute or an absolute. It's absolute versus relative, and it's subjective versus objective. You can also have like absolute subjectivism as well, where you're like these are you're measuring a different two different things here. Jesus, this guy is so fucking obnoxious.
It means the same thing. Yeah,
no, it does not.
Yes, it does.
I also have no idea how Kyla picked up on. I don't know if she went into the fucking debate. Fucking time chamber or some shit. I don't know how she picked all of this stuff up, but
no,
something being totally relative means that it is subjective.
That's just definitionally not true. That's just a super like year 1 Redditor debater mix up. Yeah.
I'm sorry. That is like a philosophy 101.
No, it's correct. Philosophy 101. You would learn that if something is completely relative, then it's purely subjective. It's the same.
No.
Yes, it is. It's
no,
the same,
you're conflating subjectivism
content.
to cultural relativism at best.
I know the difference between the two.
opposite of relativism.
Your position
what do you
is
think the opposite of relativism
you've already now that you've admitted that everything is relative.
What do you think
to
it is?
you,
What do you think it is? The opposite of
There's
relativism.
epistemic relativism. There's cultural relativism. There's ethical relativism.
What's broadly the opposite of relativism?
Everything is relative to your vantage point, your perspective.
Does he not know? Can you not answer this?
What's the opposite?
Perspectivalism. No, it's not. You're an idiot.
It's absolute.
what?
It's broadly the opposite of relativism.
Everything is relative to your vantage point, your perspective.
What's the opposite of it?
Perspectivalism.
You
No,
don't
it's
know,
not.
do you?
You're an idiot.
It's absolutism. It's not objectivism.
Relativism is not absolutism.
No, the opposite of relativism is moral
It's
absolutism.
objectivism.
No, it's
Yep.
Oh no. Oh my god, he's so fucking retarded. Okay.
Yes, it is.
No, so the
You're
opposite
an
of-
idiot.
you don't
You've
know
never
anything about
had. Have you?
philosophy.
I don't know
That's crazy.
philosophy.
That's
Right.
crazy.
I've debated all the top atheists and philosophers, and you
I'm
don't
not
know.
gonna lie. I didn't expect that. You should definitely.
The opposite
know
of
this.
relativism is objectivism.
It's absolutism.
It means the same thing.
No.
It doesn't. Objective and subjective. Objectivism or subjectivism are your 2 poles on this. If you had a paradigm here. Oh, Jesus.
Yes, it does.
No, it does not.
You have a problem with words
That's
that you
crazy.
think that 2 different words can't mean the same thing.
Okay, moral absolutism is when you can apply things universally. Objectivism
Correct.
is that something can be like capital T true. These are
You can
not
use
the same thing.
You can use the terminology. You're arguing
These
over
are not the
idiot.
same
Yes,
thing.
they are.
No, they're not.
Moral objectivism. What is that?
Moral objectivism is believing that there's like a capital T true. Correct. Fine. Yeah, that's not the same thing.
No,
as
it's not.
Kant is
moral
absolute.
objectivism. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Moral objectivism is that there are moral absolutes. It's that simple.
No.
Yes. What do you mean no?
That's crazy. Can I get water?
So now she wants to run and get water.
No, I'm not running. I'm actually just, I'm gobsmacked.
Oh, there's some under yeah.
Right, because
I'm genuinely
you have a
gobsmacked that the Phil
basically
student
you have
doesn't know
essentially
this.
you have an elementary school level education, and you're actually debating people who actually know what philosophy is.
Which is crazy because despite my little education, you still don't know what relativism is versus like absolutism and objectivism. That's fine. We can move
I've debated the dude from the Objectivist Foundation, the Ayn Rand Foundation, so I'm pretty sure I know.
Again, then you would know that
he presents the
objectivism.
position. You understand that a word can mean different things in different contexts? So if I say that something is morally objective, or that it's morally absolute, or that it's not relative or subjective, it all means the same thing, even though it's different words.
Like, holy fuck. Like, I would argue, like, in a layman's sense, this is generally true, right? Like, typically people that believe, like, in objectivism or moral objectivism, I guess you would say, because objectivism technically refers to the weird school of thought from Ayn Rand, which is a different thing. But, like, technically people that believe in, like, objectivist ideas are going to believe in absolute ideas, but they're not necessarily the same thing. They do describe different things. But, I mean...
Words. Did you know that?
That's crazy. Okay.
That's crazy. That words can mean the same thing is crazy?
That you don't have any concept of the philosophical compass is crazy.
The philosophical compass.
Yes.
So memes, meme level philosophy. Yeah.
It's not meme level
It is
philosophy.
a meme. It's a meme. It's
not...
meme level philosophy because you thought that words didn't mean the same thing.
Okay.
We have a chat coming in here from Robert. One sec, guys. Let's get that pulled up. There it is. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate
Robert
it.
donated to.
He just mixed Ayn Rand's objectivism and moral objectivism. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Because he debated the guy from the Ayn Rand Foundation. Like, that's why I made that caveat. Objectivism refers to the philosophy school of thought, and I say that very loosely. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody. I don't know fuck all about philosophy, but I don't believe that objectivism from the Ayn Rand school of thought is considered like a true, like, actual moral philosophy, because it's more like pop philosophy hobbyists. Like, I don't think anybody would say, like, oh yes, the great moral philosophers like Kant and Ayn Rand. I know that she's generally included in that conversation, but that's going to be different than just like kind of the broad, like, what does moral objectivism mean?
$200. Hey Brian, comment on this discussion. Bloomberg just reported 2 days ago that for the first time ever, white men are slightly now less than half of board members at S&P 500 companies. Progress on GDP?
Thank you, Robert.
Aren't they both right? No, they're not. You're talking about two different things here. If you're talking about like moral objectivism, I think that I'm trying to think if objectivism, if you're kind of speaking, when I think about like error theory, non-cognitivism, I think these things have to do with realism versus anti-realism, which I don't think is actually technically the same thing. But like when you're talking about like moral objectivism, I think you're talking about whether or not the statements themselves have truth values. So like objectively, we can say something is true or false. There is no other frame of reference that we can evaluate this from. Like moral objectivism is going to say that a thing is going to be true or false, like objectively, an objective, independent of some subjective observer. It's going to be true or false. But absolutism, moral absolutism versus moral relativism is going to say that absolutism is going to say if you're a moral absolutist, then those true or false statements are going to be true through all time periods, like full stop. Theoretically, I don't know if anybody actually inhabits this position, but theoretically, you could be a moral objectivist who believes in some kind of moral relativism. So I'm trying to think if these would be valid examples of this. So like maybe somebody would say, like in one society, it is objectively true that it's bad to hit your children, but in another society where you haven't learned that hitting children produces bad outcomes or something like that, like it's okay to hit your children in that society, right? And you think that objectively these moral statements are true or false. Objectively, it is true or false whether or not it's okay to hit your kids. But like the moral statements themselves are relative through time. Like they can change based on the frame of reference or based on the person who's, based on like the time period, I guess. Generally, these go together, but they're just talking about different things. The opposite of absolutism is relativism. The opposite of objectivism is subjectivism. They're not. If you're being like a pedantic debate bro, like these guys are trying to get into hyperspecifics of terms, it would be pretty foolish to just mix all of these things together and then claim that you're like some alternative debate bro. That would be really weird that in 25 years, especially if you're debating atheists and stuff, that you would have never heard where these things, the axes of these things lie on. But
now less than half of board members at S&P 500 companies. Progress on GDP?
Thank you, Robert. Do you guys want to discuss that or?
Not. I don't know if that's even true. If that's true, I feel neutrally about it.
Okay.
It depends on like why it's the case, right? I think like white men in general are being like pretty shittily treated by society right now. I think there's like a fair bit of like persecution. So I suspect that the reasons behind that is bad. But maybe it's neutral. But probably it's bad. But maybe it's neutral.
All right, we have 3 other chats. Unless Jay, you wanted to weigh in on that?
No,
one?
I agree. It's bad. No.
Sure. We have Whatever Fan. Thank you, Whatever Fan. Appreciate
donated $100. I'm enjoying Jay Barbecue cooking her puppy cheeks better than Gordon Ramsay like a donkey.
Okay.
They like my cheeks. That's all I heard.
We have.
You got cooked, is what they said. I
know you can't hear something.
Yeah. There was a nice one that came through about you.
I saw.
All right, we have Grandma Sweaters coming in here in just a moment. Grandma's Sweaters, excuse
Don't
me.
they just bootstrap all their shit from God? Who knows? We haven't. This is an hour long. We haven't gotten into a single actual back and forth yet. It's anybody like something that I've discovered. I don't know if I'm just poisoning this from Andrew Wilson, but anybody that utters the phrase internal critique is generally just, I would say at this point, it's just not worth talking to. These are deeply unserious people. When somebody utters the phrase internal critique, I think that what's going to follow is them pedantically, endlessly obsessing over every single fucking word you say and never actually offering a view of their own. And more importantly, never actually having a conversation of real substance. It's just going to be this endlessly pedantic back and forth.
Grandma's Sweaters donated $100. Erudite that makes no sense. Feminism is a populist movement where each rep in history interprets the definition. Feminism hold ancient beliefs and utilize history as foundation for their beliefs.
Yep.
Okay. It's not a refutation of anything that I've said.
Right.
If you guys want to engage,
you can't understand
if you want to engage with me,
right.
I'm right here. But if you want to keep fighting like some,
but you're arguing in yourself, in your head. It's like a hamster wheel running, and you're not actually in the debate.
I've defined feminism multiple times. I did a lot of later debate.
I bet you couldn't restate my internal critique, could you?
Of me?
Yeah.
It was something about how you think that I'm like self-defeating because you think that my definitions necessarily like contradict each other, which they don't. It was just a false dichotomy.
No, that wasn't the internal critique, but good try.
I mean, definitionally, isn't that going to be all internal critiques? Is you think that? Okay.
Okay. Do you want to remind me?
Get more.
Yeah, we have Rachel Wilson. Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Wait, no, you've been restated. What was the internal critique? Tell us.
Good try.
Okay. Do you want to remind me?
Get more.
Yeah, we have Rachel Wilson.
He doesn't want to because he has no idea.
Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate it. Thank you.
$100. The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is kill it. Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, first wave feminist. Feminism is intrinsically antinatalist.
Yep.
I just disagree.
Okay.
Good job.
Thank you, Rachel Wilson. Appreciate that.
It's almost like there's lots of camps to a large movement.
So it's elastic.
Feminism is fundamentally antinatalist. I believe. I don't know. Well, so keep in mind, I don't fuck all about philosophy. Okay, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. Antinatalism, I think, deals with the idea that if you take a look at a person, generally you can't introduce a person to the capacity for suffering if the person hasn't consented to the situation. So for instance, if I was with a friend and I was like, hey, let's go, we're gonna go out and hang out today. And we go out and we go to some place and it's like, what's this? And it's like, oh, this is the 20% torture chamber. It's really cool. There's an 80% chance that we get a free pizza, but there's a 20% chance that we get locked up and tortured for 30 minutes. And the person's like, okay, well, that's kind of like fucked up. I did not consent to being in this circumstance whatsoever. I think an antinatalist would say that when you are creating a human, you are subjecting some sentient being to a percentage chance of suffering, and they never had the ability to consent to being entered into that lottery. So by definition, having children is like an immoral thing to do. Like it's just an immoral practice. I don't think discouraging people from having kids, I don't believe, is a fundamentally antinatalist position, unless you're just using that term very casually to mean that they aren't in favor of having a ton of kids. But I don't know, whatever, who knows?
Just disagree.
Okay, good job. Thank you, Rachel Wilson. Appreciate that.
It's almost like there's lots of camps to a large movement.
So it's elastic, exactly. Thank you.
Yep.
Lots of camps to a large movement doesn't necessarily make it elastic. It just means that it can have different definitions for different people. Elastic implies that the same person will change their definition fluidly, whereas it could just be a lot of different people have different definitions for a thing, but okay.
Rachel Wilson, appreciate that.
It's almost like there's lots of camps to a large movement.
So it's elastic, exactly. Thank you.
Yep. To some degree, yeah, we would agree that there's heterogeneity within any movement.
Right. So it can be defined.
Some antinatalists, okay, maybe some antinatalists just believe in not having children, I guess. But they don't take the moral component of that at all. I feel like they should just get a different term, but maybe, okay.
And the way you need it at whatever point in the debate,
I defined it really clearly. Like
very
really
broadly,
clearly.
so that you could move it later. And
why'd you agree
I'm sorry,
to
it
it?
didn't work.
If you don't like a broad definition, again, if you're having a real conversation with somebody, if you don't like a broad definition, then clarify it. Stop asking me about antinatalism in chat. It's the most boring conversation in the world. I would rather have a chat on whether or not it's ethical to have abortions for animal fetuses if you're a vegan. I don't give a fuck. That's what a boring argument to have. If you don't like somebody's definition, then just ask for clarification. You can do this very easily without having to be an actual aviator wearing debate bro.
No,
debate,
I defined it really clearly, like
Very
really
broadly,
clearly.
so that you could move it later. And it didn't
why'd
work.
you agree
I'm sorry
to
it didn't
it?
work.
Why'd you agree to it?
Because I was setting you up to lose later. That's why.
Like, okay, so at least he admitted it. Fuck. I was going to say this and it would have been a godsend moment. I was going to say the only reason why you wouldn't ask for a clarification on a term is so that you could try to ambush somebody with it later. And that's the entire reason why you just completely avoid bringing it up, which is stupid. This is childish, right? Like, why?
Oh, it was an 8D chess plan.
Correct.
And then it took
And
you
you fell.
45 minutes to define it later.
No, I just let you dig your own hole after
Jay.
45 minutes.
Whatever you need to tell yourself.
I bet you 95% of the chat's going to agree with me.
I'm sure that this
because
chat
everybody's
agrees
dumb.
with you.
Oh, really?
No,
So
no,
everybody in the chat's dumb. Thank you.
Oh, I didn't say that. I said I'm sure chatters agree with you. I just don't.
But you think that my arguments are dumb, so they're dumb.
I'm not super interested in what chatters have to say. Viewers are a very different
But
breed.
optics and who won the debate is judged by the audience.
Yeah, but the audience isn't just chatters, right? It's also viewers, and these are not the same person.
I bet the comments are going to say otherwise.
I'm sure the comments on a very right-leaning, decently Eastern Orthodox that has already accepted most of your presuppositions as a show are going to agree with you.
What?
Right-leaning.
Right-leaning?
Yeah, I'm sure that they're going to agree with you, but that doesn't mean that you've won, right? Just like if I put this on my channel and then all of my left-leaning audiences said I won, that's not evidence that I won, obviously.
Are you sure?
Yeah, obviously. That would be like a super
Because
selection bias.
debates are for audiences.
Sure. Did you listen to anything I just said? What's a selection bias?
Well, it's when you choose the evidence based on what you want.
That's not a selection bias. That's called...
well, you're talking about audiences, and like my audience would like my stuff. So if they like me, then I think I won because my audience liked me. So I selectively chose the audience, is what you're saying.
No.
He was really off the first time. It was kind of cherry picking. He's kind of got there the second time, but yeah, I wouldn't grant any. I would be hyper pedantic on every definition now. If this guy's literally going to ooh because he's having a fucking stroke in the middle of the conversation.
Okay, no. So it's, you know what? Whatever.
Right.
You're wrong.
No, that's what it is.
It's crazy.
So
you don't
basically,
know what any of these words mean. You've really impressed people.
Like
a selection
how
bias
the word
in
objective
science,
just means
so a
absolute
selection
in the
bias
same
in science
sense?
means that like a naturally arising population that you were testing might end up having some emergent trait that you think is a construct true of that group, when actually you've already set up the prerequisite methodology to find that trait within it. So my audience is going to like my shit more, and your audience will like your shit more.
That's literally what I just said.
Yeah, but the issue is that you were defining.
That's what I just said.
No, you said that you.
That's what I just defined. You idiot.
No.
You're stupid. Like I literally just defined the same thing that you said.
Do you think that when you call me stupid, you win?
No, it's a fact.
Like, what's the
No,
purpose
it's
behind
factually demonstrating what is the case.
Again, do you think that
Because
you're winning by
you
calling
literally
me
get the same definition I did. I don't care.
No, the issue was that you were doing the what's it called when you?
I thought you knew the fallacies. I thought you knew the fallacies.
I do. I just don't remember the name.
But you don't. You don't. Because you didn't know what internal critique was either.
Do you remember what the word is for when you selectively cherry pick your evidence? What's the word for that?
Well, there's two fallacies. There's the sharpshooter fallacy and the gambler's fallacy.
He actually did. He memorized all of them. He comes in and he's got his what's that fucking picture? Holy shit. Please kill me if I ever do this in a fucking debate. It's the Texan sharpshooter fallacy. Cherry picking data clusters, center argument, or finding like, oh my god, kill me.
So you might be referring to either of those.
No.
Just cherry picking fallacy?
It's not cherry picking fallacy. It's like
doesn't
really
even know the
common.
fallacies.
I do.
No, you don't.
Yes.
So
It's crazy.
what's the gambler's fallacy if you know the fallacy?
What's a fallacy?
What's the gambler's fallacy? Is gambler's fallacy even a logical fallacy that would come up in like an ordinary debate? I think the gambler's fallacy is when people assume that future statistics can be, or future probability can be influenced by prior probability, which is not true. So for instance, if you've missed 10 times, you're definitely going to hit the next one. You have a higher chance of hitting the next one. But would this come up in like a debate over like philosophy? I don't even know what this would come up in. Okay.
What's the gambler's fallacy?
I don't know.
You just said you knew the fallacies.
I know lots of fallacies.
I don't know if gambler. She should ask for a demonstration. Can you demonstrate it in?
Because it doesn't mean I know every
Well, that's one of the most popular ones. You don't know?
Nope.
Incomplete evidence? Fallacy of incomplete evidence?
No.
Suppressing evidence? Okay.
I can't think of the word. It starts with a C.
Sure. We have a few more chats coming through. Thank you, Christopher. Appreciate
Christopher
it.
Scott donated $100.
Thank you.
Absolutism is a form of objectivism. They are intrinsically intertwined, not so bright.
Oh, you thought words only had one
$100
meaning.
donor said it,
you
so it
thought
must
words
be
only had one
true.
meaning. I'm sorry. Sometimes they can mean two different things. It's called a word concept fallacy. Did you know about that one or no?
I should write that one
You
down
should,
so that
actually,
when later you get
because
mad at me.
Word concept fallacy? Damn, this guy's on 27 different levels of fallacy memorizations.
For using the
Right.
word
So
for two
Texas
things.
sharpshooter, go look it up. Word concept fallacy, look that up. Gambler's fallacy, go look that up. And internal critique.
Thank you, Chad. By the way, guys, we did set a super chat goal. We're at 13 of 50. We have about 15 minutes left on it. Kyla will wear a MAGA hat.
If you give me part of that.
I will give you a $2 bill.
If I'm the reward for it, I'm getting some of that money. But I'll definitely wear the hat.
We'll talk after the
Yeah,
show.
yeah.
We've got to see if we hit the goal, but
We can
it's
hit the goal,
happening.
guys. We
50
can
minutes.
definitely
50
hit the
minutes. Let's see here. We're all caught up.
You should give $100 to whichever chatter can figure out why Jay doesn't understand what a false analogy is and was incorrect in the use of it.
I know what a false analogy is.
That's true, but then why do you use it incorrectly?
I didn't.
You did. So either you're
Comparing the
lying
nation
right
state
now
of
or losing
Israel,
that faith.
comparing the nation state of Israel to the history of feminism is a false analogy.
What was I comparing?
You asked for a definition that was not connected to history. And then, by the way, you said that history is bound up with a definition.
So I asked you if you could define Israel. If you could define Israel without going through the centuries. And you said, yeah, I could.
No, I didn't.
Yes, I said that you could define Israel.
No, I didn't. I said I have
history.
to. Now
and
you're
the
lying.
reason why you said that it's disanalogous is you said Israel has too long of a history.
No, you just yapped and didn't listen.
Okay.
I said you can't. I said you can't define Israel without going into the ancient history.
You said that I don't want to, and that it's disanalogous because Israel has long history and feminism has short history.
That would contradict what you just said.
That
would contradict what you just said like 2 minutes ago.
That doesn't matter. I was telling you.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So contradictions don't matter in a debate.
Your contradictions matter. Yes.
Oh my gosh! You just admitted that you contradicted, and now you're saying that I'm.
No, I did not.
You did.
No.
You said they don't matter.
No, I said that when you were when I asked you to define Israel, I asked if you could define Israel without going through these centuries of history, and you said that you could.
No,
and
I
then
said no.
Why?
I did
you
not.
said that you could.
You're lying. I said I didn't.
The reason why it was a false analogy is because
you're losing your mind. You're crazy. You can't hold your claim.
This is crazy.
I said you can't because in the same case as feminism, you can't.
You know what? If you want to retroactively change your claim and correct it, fair enough.
I think maybe you misheard.
No.
Because it wouldn't work for my argument if I said
agree.
the opposite.
That's why it was stupid of you to say.
I didn't say that.
Yes,
I said that neither feminism nor Israel could be defined apart from their history.
You said that,
and
Israel?
You're lying right now.
No, I'm not.
You are lying.
You said that you weren't.
Lying.
The reason why
these
were disanalogous is you couldn't go through the centuries of history for Israel because of the extent. And this is why I laughed at you and I said they're disanalogous because one has long history and one has short history.
You just misheard because you don't listen.
I didn't. Maybe you misspoke.
You can't understand.
I can grant you that you misspoke. Maybe you misspoke.
No, I didn't misspeak.
You obviously did.
I didn't misspeak.
You obviously did. But
it's disanalogous because the two things are different. Separate from that, I said that I can't define Israel apart from history. You don't even understand what I'm saying.
You can compare two different things. The things that I'm comparing is defining things without their history. And you said that I could define Israel without going through the centuries.
I said
that's fair that you misspoke.
No, I didn't misspeak.
Okay.
You just don't listen.
Okay.
We got chat coming through here. We got Ali Burr Knight. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Ali Knight donated $100.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Erudite, please remove and rotate from your Twitter banner. You're not worthy. Occult feminism will help with the After Co.
My favorite thing is dumbasses who think that I have up there because I like Andrew Tate. It's clearly a meme. It's obviously a meme.
Earlier on in the discussion, you said that feminism is unavoidable. I think during your opening introduction.
Unavoidable and necessary, yeah.
Do you want to get into that a little bit? Like why is it unavoidable?
I think because as nations grow, essentially, eventually you will want women to join the workforce to be able to compete at like a global scale. And therefore it becomes inevitable because you need women to join the workforce. And as soon as women join the workforce, they now have way more leveraging power by having money and certain rights. And once they have those rights and those leverage powers, they're necessarily going to leverage that power to give themselves more freedoms that they obviously wanted. What are you asking right now?
If it didn't exist for thousands of years in history, then it wasn't necessary.
Really? Well, what is the most successful country in the world right now? What are the most successful countries in the world right now? Do they have women only or men only, or do they use a mix of both? Or like, why would we go to history? Do you think that society, the question should be, what society in history is more successful than the United States of America is today? Curious. Give me an example of that. Like, what a weird, stupid question.
I'm pretty sure you literally said that multiple countries fell because of like liberalization. So
I'm just asking you.
Liberalization and giving women more rights.
Did it exist for thousands of years until modernity?
Not all the forms of it.
Okay, so then it's not necessary and it's not inevitable.
It's absolutely necessary at this point.
If it did it for thousands of years, then it's not necessary and inevitable. You idiot.
What do you mean it's not necessary and inevitable? Inevitable doesn't mean present through all periods of time. Inevitable could just mean an inevitable outcome. That's like saying, like, does the universe tend towards entropy? Like, necessarily. And inevitably, yes, it does. Well, it's not in maximum state of entropy right now, so it can't be necessary. It can't be inevitable. Like, what? Hello? What?
Teach you something crazy.
You're not going to teach anything.
Over time, technologies develop, which means that the way that the Romans...
talking and asserting things.
You got to let me talk. The way that the Romans worked their world is not the way that we can work our world, obviously, because things
then it's not inevitable and it's not necessary.
It is inevitable because...
Was it necessary and inevitable in Rome?
Wait, just let her finish. Let her finish.
What do you think inevitable means? Inevitable implies some time scale. No? Like, what...
Okay, for example, if you don't update to technology, your society tends to fall behind.
None of this is relevant.
Technologies that make feminism necessary and unavoidable would be things like tampons and things like birth control. This is absolutely true, and they're never going back in the hole. We're never putting the Colgate back in the...
Why not just like, it would just be so much easier to just say, I hate women. Just say that. Just say, I hate women. We can all say base. We can all join you in agreement, okay? Because that is base. Fuck women. Just say that. Instead of trying to pretend like you can intellectualize it. So clearly, we've lost the generation of intellectual misogynists. And now we're just left with this, the low human capital, low IQ sexist, which is fine, okay? But just say that and own it, okay? I hate women. Okay, base. Just say it and leave it at that.
In the fucking tube, right?
Wow.
So Poland is a great example of a country that didn't update its technology, and as a result, it got stomped. When the beginning of, I believe, World War I or World War II, they invested in cavalry because the Polish cavalry was like the greatest thing, the Winged Hussars, everyone loved them, but tanks became a thing, and they got...
Also, as a heads up too, I think also something that happened, and again, I don't know if these two have debated before, but I think when he was trying to do his internal critique or whatever, I think probably the first few answers that she gave were kind of surprising to him, and then he reverted into ultra debate bro mode. This is a thing that you do when you realize that you probably aren't going to be able to win on any of the substance, and so instead you revert to just trying to endlessly point out, infinitely pedantic arguments, because you know that if you have to actually get on substance, you're probably just going to get obliterated. I'm pretty sure, 99% sure that's what happened in this conversation.
absolutely, utterly dumpstered and destroyed, which is why for societies to compete at a global geopolitical level, you have to keep up with technology. The reality is that China wants to win over America, which means they're going to allow women into the workforce, they're going to give them tampons, they're going to give them birth. You have to.
None of that proves that it's necessary and inevitable.
It proves that it's necessary and inevitable because the technology changes at a global level, and for you to compete at a global level, you have to allow women into the workforce.
So she just yaps. This is like her whole thing is to just yap. If it didn't happen in Rome, then it wasn't necessary and inevitable, and that proves my point.
Do we live in Rome anymore?
Oh my gosh, are you serious? You're that stupid.
Do we live in Rome anymore? Or the technology
You said necessary and inevitable?
Yes.
Was it necessary and inevitable in Rome?
That's not what she said. She didn't say it was necessary and inevitable in Rome. That's not the argument. We're not talking about Rome, are we?
Again, the technology. Do we live in Rome? Do we live in Rome?
So it wasn't necessary and inevitable.
Are the technology
in Rome? You're making it more specific.
Follow an argument that isn't just yapping and asserting your position?
Jay, can you
it's an
follow
argument.
me?
What's the argument?
It was not necessary in Rome because they didn't have tampons.
Then it wasn't necessary and inevitable. Thank you.
It is inevitable because we now have tampons.
You just said it's not necessary.
Do tampons exist?
That refutes your position.
Do tampons exist?
No.
Did they exist in Rome?
No, they don't exist.
Did they exist in Rome?
There are no tampons.
There's no such thing as tampons. Okay, great. If the tampons,
no such thing.
Did they exist in Rome?
No.
So tampons are not real.
Correct.
Okay. Well, if we're doing this type of debate, I guess that's true. And the sky's purple, and I'm a 12-foot hippopotamus.
We have some chats coming through. We have Flower Pot.
Flowerpot91 donated $100. You two just need to bang already. You are obviously secretly in love.
I'm married.
I think
I'm also married.
They're both married. Thank you, though, for the message, Flowerpot. We have Lucas here. He says, "Dear God, is this the exemplar of today's U.S. education system? This woman is an amalgam of feckless, vapid ineptitude combined with unearned high self-esteem." Do you want to respond to that, Kyla, or?
I'm Canadian.
Huh?
I'm Canadian.
Oh, right.
Even worse.
Okay, there you go. All right.
Actually, Canada has like one of the most competitive education systems.
No, it's worse because it produces examples like this.
We have Intel Wild. Thank you, Intel Wild.
Intel Wild donated $100. Not so bright. You look like you have gained some weight lately. Moo moo oink oink oink.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I just finished my bulk cycle. So I'm about 15 pounds heavier than I am, and I'm about 120% more muscle than I want. And
is that we're going to do, now we did the part where we take a whole bunch of donos from sexist people. Yes, this is why I don't go on the show anymore. It's fucking retarded.
I didn't go. That has nothing to do with it. I'm answering why I'm fat right now.
Are you building muscle bulk or fat bulk?
No, I just said I gained 120% of the muscle that I'd ideally like to maintain after my...
Okay, that's why I said, is that part of your feminism regimen?
Nope, it's just part of putting on muscle, which
all right.
you would not know about, I guess.
We have Giovanni. Thank you.
Donated $100. It's not too much to demand definition for the entire topic of the debate. A good faith debate is contingent on being charitable to the other's intention. Gay sophistry to secure W is lame AF.
True.
That's true. It is.
You got one fan.
It is pretty gay.
Is this directed
That's
at Jay?
crazy. You knew that was about you. Oh my God. Thank you.
That is true. I thought he was going to try to argue that. I thought when he was nodding his head, I thought he was going to argue that it was about her. It's actually insanely telling that he instantly assumed that was one of her defenders. Oh, man.
That's so fucking
Jesus.
funny.
Dude, you're so cringe right now.
He's like, I know that's me. I'm doing the gay sophistry. That is so funny.
Well, if any of you want to get a chat in, it's $100 for a TTS. You
remember,
can do that at streamlabs.com.
If you put in enough money, I'll wear a MAGA hat.
Yeah, let me see where we're at on that. So we're at 17 of 50, so we need 33 more to hit the goal. We got about 45 minutes. You got to do 10 and over super chats over there on YouTube. Or if somebody does a champagne pop, we'll just do it right away. So
is that like a big donation? Yeah,
it's through Streamlabs. They have to, they do it through Streamlabs. Or if we have Crystal here, they have to do 1 Ethereum. So that's another option.
One Ethereum?
1 Ethereum for
How much is that worth now?
It's like, I think 1800 last night, around there.
Holy shit.
It went down, but it's a little back up. So
you're high class. That's expensive.
I've got some Cristal here if you guys want to get liquored up. So, okay. I would like to continue on a little bit with the debate here. Do you guys want to shift the prompt to,
sure.
We could talk about patriarchy specifically.
We haven't even talked about anything yet.
For another
do you guys want to talk
45
about
minutes?
Immigration or something?
No.
No? Okay.
Not really. Well, I didn't prep for immigration, so I wouldn't want to talk about immigration now.
I'm just, at least with a feminism related topic, trying to think here. Any suggestions?
I mean, we could talk about whether or not you think it's biological or not that men have an innate role to lead or not. Because when you debated Jim Bob, you seem to think that soldiers are who puts on a costume.
What?
You said that a soldier is anyone that wears the costume of a soldier. Right?
I'm pretty sure I was making fun of Jim Bob when I said that. I don't think
you were arguing that there's no difference between a soldier who's a man and a soldier's a woman because anybody puts on.
Another example of like a bad faith debater or somebody who's not interested in having a real conversation. I was actually really shocked because I think oh God, I'm forgetting his name. The pickup artist guy we talked to a lot. Fuck me. The guy who's not like crazy. Oh, Alex. Okay, yeah. I kept thinking Andrew. Alex, yeah. Alex did this thing that I almost never hear somebody do, where Alex was like, hey, in a past conversation, I heard you say this. Can you explain what you meant? Right? Which is very rare, because usually when people bring up past conversations, what they're trying to do is they're trying to say like, I heard you bring up this thing, and you know the context might be correct or not, and then they're just trying to like debate your ghost. Like, I actually want to have an exact argument with the thing that you said in the past. Like, well, I'm right here. Why don't you just ask me what I meant, or we can seek clarification? It's always these like cringe gotchas.
on the uniform becomes that, right?
I feel like you must be citing Ken. I think Ken was somewhat equalizing the genders. What are you asking?
No, you were arguing
ask me the
about
question.
whether or not men should be the frontline soldiers. You and Jim Bob particularly were going back and forth.
I'm
right?
fine with men being frontline soldiers. Why don't you just ask me, rather than putting words in my mouth, just ask me what you want.
I did just ask your question. I said, do you think
No. Oh, okay.
that there's a gender or natural component that men have that makes them leaders and women not leaders in general?
Yeah, to some degree, yes. And then I think that gets reinforced culturally as well.
What does that mean?
What's the biological pieces?
No, what do you mean when it's reinforced culturally? Like what? What is?
Multiple things. It would be multifactorial. So, okay. Fancy word. I know. Very
Right.
spooky.
I don't know big words. Go ahead.
You do. I'm sure you know what.
No, I don't.
What does
no.
multifactorial mean, Jay?
Make your argument.
Okay, sure. So when I say multifactorial in a culture, I mean things like epigenetics, right? So I think when we have a culture that reinforces certain things and makes people more successful as a result of those expressions, we'll also reinforce it through epigenetics. It'll turn them on more often, but also then it builds a cultural, social identity of like what it means to be man. And that's both testosterone and neurochemical, but it's also slightly epigenetic, right? But it's also on top of that, it's things like culture and society and what we do.
So there is a component that's biological, that's genetic.
Well, he does this cringe, weird thing where you're like arguing. It feels like arguing in a toxic relationship where like somebody's trying to figure out, like a significant other tries to figure out, like, did you go to this party just because, just because there was alcohol or whatever, right? And you're not supposed to drink or something, right? Because you, I don't know, work the next day or something. And some guy's like, oh, I went to John's last night. And then your friend is like, really, you went to John's? So what did you go to John's for? It's like, oh, well, they were having a Halo 2 LAN, okay? Classic, we got the Series 2. Oh, really? And what'd you guys eat? It's like, oh, well, we ordered pizza. It's like, and where'd you guys go after you finished playing games? We didn't actually go out at all. We just like stayed in all night. Really? Did anybody go out at all? Yeah, I think some guys went out. Where'd they go? I think they went to the gas station to do what? I don't know. I think they grabbed snacks and beer and stuff. Oh, beer. So you did go for alcohol. So the whole fucking reason why you went is because you fucking knew that, like, he's done this like, I don't even know what you would call this style of argument, where he's clearly mining for a singular thing. And then he'll keep asking the question, so what does that mean? What does that mean? And then finally she'll say like, oh, well, there's components of this and that. And then it's like, so you do think that there's some biology involved? It's like, yeah. What? It's so cringe.
But it's also on top of that, it's things like culture and society and what we do.
So there is a component that's biological, that's genetic, but there's also a component that you think is cultural.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's natural and biological, why ought we put into place a position or system that is counter to that? That would make that position or system unnatural.
Like, listen to how much more binary he makes this sound from the bimodal kind of position that she was giving, right? Where he's like, this is natural. And therefore, and by is natural, he means that binarily, every man is suited to be a soldier, every woman is suited to be not a soldier, or at the very least, every person that is suited to be a soldier is a man, and there is no person suited to be a soldier who is a woman, right? He's binary in some regards there. Like, he has to transform the question like that, and then now that he's transformed her definition, which she clearly doesn't agree with that, right? If he were to ask her, do you agree with what I just said? Clearly, she wouldn't agree with that. And then from there, he's asking a question of like, why should we go counter to? He's begging the question, actually. It's a form of begging the question, right? He's baked in the conclusion essentially to the question he's asking by assuming a premise that she didn't even explain.
That's what I argued at the beginning, trying to make that point again.
Because it's not just biological, right? And I think
but the fact that it's not just doesn't address the question that's being asked.
It does. Just because it's not just biological means that there might be other factors at play, or that biology isn't 100% determinative, means that there could be other factors at play for why somebody might want to be a soldier or might not want to be a soldier.
By limiting people arbitrarily.
That's a parse hole fallacy, by the way. Do you know that?
Oh my God.
Because by limiting people arbitrarily, I think you decrease your
It's not arbitrarily.
It is arbitrarily. So for example,
you just admitted that there's a difference, so it wouldn't be arbitrary.
It would be arbitrary. So say for example, well, you don't want to don't do ecological fallacies on me, right? So if we have like a bell curve, right, of men and women, and men tend to be a little bit more extreme, and say we're selecting for a job that's purely
So you're
about,
repeating the first 20 minutes of this discussion and ignoring what I just asked you.
If you want me to respond to you, I can. If you want to just like bloviate,
but you're not responding. You're just
I'm trying to give you a response.
20 minutes.
I'm trying to give you a response.
It's not a response.
Okay, I can just sit here and you can be like,
it's like a machine.
Fallacy.
Yep,
or do you want to respond?
True.
You can try.
Okay. You sure? You're the leader here.
Try.
Okay. So at an individual level, right? I don't want a system that would limit any single individual from achieving higher levels than they can otherwise achieve. Why are you mad?
It's just like talking to like a child. It's just
okay. What word are you mad about? I know words are very sensitive for you.
What justifies the position that you're arguing for, that patriarchy should not be the norm, but feminism.
I've never said that. I've literally never said patriarchy.
They're
should
mutually
be
exclusive
They're not
positions.
mutually exclusive.
Yes, they are. Feminism is a revolutionary.
We live in a
movement.
patriarchy, and feminism exists.
That doesn't mean that they're not mutually exclusive.
Yes,
that's
it
a
does.
stupid argument. No, it's not. That's an appeal to that's a naturalist fallacy. The fact that it is.
What?
Oh, then it must be good or it must be right.
I'm not saying that it's good or right. I'm saying that they both exist.
The fact that they exist doesn't mean that the positions are
coherent. How are they mutually exclusive?
They can be ideological or epistemically incoherent, even if they exist at the same time. You don't know that?
Okay. So how are they mutually exclusive, Jay?
Because they're contrary positions. Patriarchy is an anti-feminist position. That's what I'm arguing.
I would not agree with that by and large.
You should just ask, do we have a patriarchal society right now? Do we have a feminist society right now? Are these really both binary?
Patriarchy just means that it wants to oppress and crush women?
You admitted that feminism is a historical movement. All of its proponents are revolutionaries who wanted an egalitarian society and did not want a patriarchy. They're mutually exclusive. So you've redefined the position to be your own feminism that's not relevant to what we're debating.
I don't have to argue for those women. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive.
But your position is stupid then, because it's an ambiguous position that's just anything that you subjectively think helps women.
Nope. I just don't think that. Nope. I don't think that feminism is doing a good job by just dismantling patriarchy unless the patriarchy is enforced.
Okay, but we haven't heard why feminism's good other than GDP.
That's because you...
You didn't even
you said GDP. Quibbling over words.
You just said GDP.
Really mad.
You didn't give an ought.
And then you got like super...
No, I called you out on oughts.
Epistemic
I called you out on oughts,
GDP.
which you can't do.
I will use literally any fucking word because I know you really love words to try to...
debates have to do with words.
It's crazy.
Why ought we have... She can't tell us why we ought to have feminism.
Just so you guys know, this is chatter.
She can't give... What's the ought?
I don't even want to go there
because you don't have an argument.
No, because you can't engage with me. Because you get so persnickety about words.
What is the argument that feminism is right for society?
It is beneficial to society because it improves innovator scale. It allows more people
to enter the workforce.
GDP is one of the things.
And why are we supposed to think that's the good?
Because I think it is morally good to allow
you think that? No, why is that the good?
Because I believe that it is good.
So it's you subjectively saying because it's the good.
No, I'm a divine.
If you're asking her the question, what do you...
Man theorist.
But when we went to God, God didn't ever give us a feminist society.
Yeah, but I don't.
By your own admission.
Actually, I think by my definition of feminism, we both agreed that ancient Christianity was feminist.
No,
and then
that's
we're like,
moving the goalpost.
Never mind. Feminism is not that thing anymore.
That's moving the goalpost.
It's not moving the goalpost in any way, shape, or form.
You admitted.
I have had the exact same definition of the fucking word.
You admitted the society.
You just don't like it.
No, you have an elastic, broad definition that you allowed to fit.
I specified it as much as possible.
Monarchy and a patriarchal society in ancient Israel. That doesn't help feminism. That's not your position.
Absolutely,
There's no feminism
it does, because it gave women like rights to owning land.
That's not feminism.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Feminism is a modern revolutionary movement, you idiot. It's not an ancient movement.
This is unironically
it's not an ancient
civil
movement.
Rights because the Civil Rights Act didn't exist.
You're debating feminism, which you said is a historical movement.
Word can mean multiple
you said it's a historical movement.
I agreed, but yes, it's a historical movement.
So it's not an ancient civilizational movement.
It's a construct.
It's a modern revolutionary social movement.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that we can't find elements of feminism in the past.
She just lost the debate again for the fourth time.
This guy just lost the debate 4 times in a row because he didn't even know that there are 4 ways of feminism, and he just kept going. But there's 3. But there's 3.
Yeah, if there's 4, there's also 3. That's a point. That's a point I'm making.
That's a really stupid argument.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
There's still 3 if there's 4. You didn't know that.
Realize that
there's also 2. There's also 1.
He didn't know.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many. I don't care.
History matters, but it doesn't matter that there's 4 waves. But the history matters, but it doesn't matter that there's 4 waves.
No,
there was 3, so it doesn't matter that there was 4.
You're not defending your position. She doesn't even listen.
There's nothing to listen to. Like you're literally just like you're just.
You literally didn't know that. You said that you're a relativist.
Yes.
You just said that it's your definition and you're the source of your argumentation. I'm sorry. That means you lost the debate because you can't appeal to anything outside of yourself.
That's not true. Again, if we want to do Agrippa's dilemma, you're just falling into dogmatism. Dogmatism's stupid too.
No.
Yeah. Infinite regression
I do internal critiques. I do worldview analysis.
How do you solve infinite regression and dogmatism?
Because I don't believe in foundationalism.
How do you solve Agrippa's dilemma? How do you do it?
Because I'm not a foundationalist.
All axioms are circular fundamentally. All axioms.
That's my position. I know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm an epistemic holist.
How do you solve that?
By worldview apologetics.
None of these things matter. It's all circular, anyways.
No, not everything is circular.
How do you solve
fundamentals? Why are you yapping if you don't want to know the answer?
He's so mad.
I'm just doing what you're doing. I'm not gonna lie. I've put on the clothing of Jay. Okay, I'm performing now. I don't have as good of hair though, or sunglasses. I don't have as good of hair to perform as Jay, or sunglasses.
Okay.
Keep answering. I'll keep doing it. Watch.
So there's a difference between something being circular at a normative level versus paradigm fundamental epistemic holism. But that's
aren't axioms all circular though, Jay? Didn't you just agree to that like 2 minutes ago? See, he's contradicting himself. He doesn't even know he's
true. That is exactly the retarded shit that he said earlier. That is true. Yep, true.
Talking about. This is crazy.
True.
I just won the debate.
Yep. Spurg.
Yep. Yeah, doing exactly what you do.
True.
That's true.
All right, we have a couple chats. We have Dank Naked with the 50. Thank you for the soup chat. Kat, thank you for the soup chat. We have Lucas again. Yes, dear, what this chatter says, parentheses, yours truly is indeed true. I'm on my firm's associate hiring committee. I would describe you as a quote-unquote mediocrity, but in all candor, even that would be gross hyperbole. Wow, okay. Response to Lucas or no?
Lucas, does your girlfriend know that you masturbate to bullying women online? Because I don't know if she'd like that.
She might be watching with him. Maybe they both wrote this together. Thank you, Lucas, for the soup chat. I do appreciate it. We have 2 chats coming in here through Streamlabs. One moment. We have the great, one sec, guys, it is loading. Every day I'm struggling, asks this.
Every day I'm struggling donated $100. Not so erudite, what is the ontology of logic from your worldview? Are ethics universal?
Do you want to respond to that?
I'm a divine command theorist. I believe that God is fundamentally relative in how he approaches things, and I do my best to use exegesis, eisegesis, and divine revelation to understand what God's will is and to enact that in my life and understand
pure gibberish. So there's no such thing.
Damn, he just has no fucking idea.
As divine command theory that is relative.
Yep, you found one.
Pure gibberish.
Can I you just scoot your microphone to the edge of the table there? Perfect.
Yes.
And then we have Intel Wild. Hold on, let me read this before.
Probably shouldn't read it if you're cringing that hard already.
It pertains to destiny.
And like my sexuality?
That's me.
No.
Is that relative or is that
part of objective morals?
Is it circular when you ask that question, or is it part of like your absolute?
Yes, sex crimes.
All right, thank you, Intel Wild. Guys, $100 Streamlabs. So you $100 super chat. So they take a lot. Just for those of you who support Kyler or you support Jay here, just
that guy's mad because I recorded his mom too. In a video game. Just kidding.
Consider sending it through either Streamlabs or some other method. And then if you're enjoying the stream, guys, like the video. Also, if you guys are watching on Twitch, drop us a follow on the Prime sub if you have one. Thank you, guys. Shall we get back to the debate? We have maybe about another 30 minutes or so.
Sure.
So
Jay can just pick a word to define and then prattle about it. Actually, could you give me the history of a word?
You asked me for the definition, so I don't know what you're talking about. Me prattling over the words when you asked for the definition.
I asked for definition. Right. And you prattled for 30 minutes.
No, I gave you definitions connected to the historical people. You didn't help. No, you didn't do anything but talk yourself into oblivion.
I pulled it out of your
You didn't do anything. No,
we did it.
So you haven't explained why this is.
Okay, hold on. I have to look at how far restaurant is for me. We might be ending soon. 1 sec.
Hold on.
I'm going back to the debate.
We've been circling this.
But you haven't.
Just for context.
Can you restate what your argument is as to why it's good, other than GDP? Is that your only argument?
I also believe that it is good because I think it is a liberal value to give people freedom.
Why are liberal values good?
I think it leads to the highest level of flourishing within a society.
Okay, so it's a circle. Thank you.
Yeah,
good job.
all axioms are circular.
Jesus.
No, they're not all circular.
Yes,
I'm
all
not a
axioms
foundationalist.
are circular.
Right, but I'm not a foundationalist.
Doesn't matter. All axioms are circular.
No, not everything. No, listen.
God is good.
How do you know that all axioms are circular?
It's fundamental. It's fundamental to philosophy.
Can I just claim that it's fundamental? Does that make it so?
This is like being like, how do you know that,
it's called
that
epistemology.
P is the probability factor? It's like,
it's called epistemology.
The definition
that's
of
what it
the
is.
word.
Epistemology. So what's the justification for that?
For which?
That all axioms are circular.
It's because they're foundational. They're foundational.
That would mean that they're circular, right?
Because definitionally, that's what they are. By definition. I don't know if you would. I mean, would you say axioms are circular? I mean, I guess you could. I have never done formal logic or anything. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a circle. Mm-hmm. So your argument for how you know that is that it's a circle.
I'm saying no. What I'm saying when you refute my claim by going circular,
I'm asking you.
All axioms are circular. Also,
how do you know that? Is what I'm asking.
It's foundational. It's just like basic.
Okay, so
it's basic presuppositional.
You understand? That's not, you don't even know what presuppositions are. No, you don't. Because if you can do that in a debate, that means I can do that in the debate.
Yep.
So there's no debate possible. I can just say all of my beliefs and my positions are foundational and axiomatic.
It's almost like I said I could agrippa trilemma you too, and then it would be stupid.
That's not what we're talking about.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
No.
Yes.
Tell me what an epistemic
Typically, when we engage in debates, we
what is
some
an
level of
epistemic
normativity of
justification?
each other's world so that we can actually
What is
talk
an
about
epistemic
ideas.
justification?
I don't know. Definitely.
Is that a formal philosophy term? Epistemic justification. I've heard of you could have like a theory of truth or whatever. Epistemic justification. Is that like a? I don't think that's a. Is that a real thing? Okay, I don't know.
Find it for me, Jay.
Well, I thought you knew all about philosophy.
No, you've been teaching.
No, you
so
told
much.
me you said you were going to instruct me in philosophy.
I'm really dumb. Just tell me.
You said earlier that you knew philosophy. So what is epistemic justification?
I'm pretty sure I never said that I knew philosophy.
No, you did. You said I knew nothing. I knew no fallacies.
I laughed and said it's insane to me that you have a philosophy degree because I'm assuming you know philosophy, but you don't know multiple fallacies, and you unironically are trying to say that the opposite
So you're
of
melting.
relativism
I'm
is
sorry that you're
objectivism.
having a hard time, but this is how we do debates.
Okay.
What's the argument for feminism other than GDP? And it's just good and it's liberal? Okay. So do you understand that I can then come to the debate and say that it's good because it's not liberal?
Okay, and then I would say, why do you not value liberalism?
You're missing the point. Because
why do you not value liberalism?
That's not an argument.
I think liberalism leads to higher levels of flourishing based on every single statistical norm that we have that exists out there. That's what I value. I think that when people are doing better, people are happier, healthier, fuller, better mentally.
The fact that you value that doesn't make it an argument. That's the point.
I believe that God wants us to be happy, healthy,
just appealing to that doesn't do anything for your case.
I'm telling you, Jay, there's nothing I can say that you're not going to throw circular.
Because you're not making arguments. Correct.
That's what debates. No, you're not.
Assertions are not arguments.
Okay.
Yeah, in a debate, I'm not going to grant you normativity.
I've made assertions.
Correct.
I've supplied evidence for it, and then you've just gone, oh, it's circular.
No, you're
it's
the one
circular.
that's like losing it.
Yeah.
No, I've said GDP. I said flourishing is good because it improves.
Why is that the good?
I believe that it is good because I think
the fact that you believe that doesn't make it
because
good.
I think that God wants us to be happy, healthy, whole, and good people, and I think that liberal societies I think that liberal societies produce all of those outcomes to the highest level. That doesn't mean that I think that God is a liberal by any means. God is so much more and beyond all of that. But I think by and large, the liberal system
if he
leads to the greatest
then he would
possible
be a
outcomes.
liberal.
God is so much bigger than any label or construct that any human can apply to him. I don't even know why you're saying that.
Because it's a dumb argument.
You're right. It would be a dumb argument for me to apply any political fucking label to the omnipotent
You just
God.
said that liberal societies are good. That's what you appeal to in terms of divine command theory. So that would make God illiberal.
No, it wouldn't. At all, because I'm sure you can conceive of a world. I'm sure you can conceive of a world where God is more than any political system.
Just saying God's more.
My best possible interpretation of how to engage in this world
liberalism,
in a good
then
way.
I'm a liberal.
I don't
so
think
you
that
have
God
conflicting positions.
I think liberalism strikes as close to it. No, not at all. You're just not engaging with.
You literally can't think through your own arguments.
You
this
can't.
Is so sad.
You actually can't understand.
You said
me
that liberal society is what God wants, but God's not a liberal.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said that what God wants is for people to be happy, healthy.
Okay. Good time today. Thanks. Holy shit. Please don't ever let me end up in a debate with this guy. Jay Dyer. This guy's, they're still going.
I'm willing to work 100 hours a week. In fact,
Admire puzzle. Oh no. I did the one this morning. Oh no. Rip. All right. I love you guys. I'll be back tomorrow. Stay safe. Don't die. Be careful.